The ancient Xeraxian worm tears through space, devouring the human fleet as if it were mere cosmic dust. Aboard the HSS Defiant, the lone surviving battlecruiser, Captain Isaac Walker clenches his fists. The war against the technologically superior Rizians, once a contest of strategy and firepower, has become a desperate struggle for survival. Walker's eyes widen as another human capital ship disintegrates under the worm's relentless assault. The creature's massive segmented body undulates through the void, its biomechanical armor gleaming with an otherworldly sheen. Tentacles, each as thick as a frigate, lash out with terrifying speed and precision. "Aria, status report," Walker demands, his voice tight with tension. The ship's AI responds instantly. "Captain, we've detected a potential weakness in the worm's armor. However, exploiting it would require us to approach within lethal range of its primary weapons." Walker's mind races. The Arcturus system, once a bastion of human resistance, is now a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen corpses. He knows that if the worm isn't stopped here, Earth itself could be next. "Prepare a boarding team," Walker orders, his decision made. "We're going in." As the elite Marines assemble in the hangar bay, alarms blare. A Rizian escape pod, battered and sparking, crashes through the defensive screens. Walker and his team train their weapons on the pod as its hatch hisses open. A slender figure stumbles out, hands raised. "Don't shoot! I can help you!" Walker's finger tightens on the trigger. The alien before him is clearly Rizian, the very enemy they've been fighting. Her iridescent skin shimmers under the harsh hangar lights, her four eyes blinking rapidly. "I'm Phoebe," she says, her translator struggling with human intonation. "I was part of the team that created the Xeraxian worm. But this isn't what I intended. It must be stopped." Walker hesitates. Trust a Rizian? It seems absurd. But as he watches another human ship explode on the view screen behind her, he realizes they're out of options. "You're with us," he growls, "but one wrong move, and you'll wish the worm had gotten you first." Phoebe nods, relief evident in her alien features. The team boards a modified shuttle, its hull reinforced to withstand the cosmic forces they're about to face. Walker takes the controls, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. They launch, immediately assaulted by a barrage of debris and Rizian fighters. Walker's piloting skills are put to the test as he weaves through the chaos, the massive form of the Xeraxian worm looming ever closer. A tentacle whips past, missing them by mere meters. The shuttle shudders as it's buffeted by the creature's gravitational field. Walker grits his teeth, pushing the engines to their limit. "There!" Phoebe shouts, pointing at a jagged tear in the worm's outer shell. "That's our way in!" Walker doesn't hesitate. He banks hard, aiming straight for the breach. The shuttle scrapes through, metal screaming against alien biomatter. They've made it inside. As the team disembarks, they find themselves in a nightmarish landscape of pulsating flesh and strange semi-organic machinery. The air is thick and acrid, filled with spores that swirl in otherworldly patterns. "The control center is at the core," Phoebe explains, her voice hushed. "But we'll have to fight through the worm's internal defenses and any Rizian security forces to reach it." Walker nods, his mind already formulating a plan. He's faced seemingly insurmountable odds before, but never anything like this. As they begin their perilous journey towards the worm's core, he can't help but think of the exotic creatures he once trained back on Earth. If he could tame those beasts, perhaps. An alarm sounds echoing through the organic corridors. Rizian voices can be heard in the distance, growing closer. "Move out," Walker orders, raising his weapon. The fate of humanity rests on their shoulders, and he'll be damned if he lets an oversized space worm be the end of his species. The team moves swiftly through the pulsating corridors of the Xeraxian worm, their footsteps muffled by the spongy organic matter beneath them. Walker led the way, his weapon at the ready, while Phoebe guided them towards the creature's core. As they approached what appeared to be a massive chamber, Walker raised his fist, signaling the team to halt. He turned to Phoebe, his voice low. "Is this it? The control center?" Phoebe nodded, her four eyes scanning the area. "Yes, but something's not right." Before them lay a vast expanse of neural tissue, crisscrossed with glowing filaments and dotted with what looked like organic computer terminals. At the center stood a towering pillar of crystalline material, pulsing with energy. Walker stepped forward, examining the alien technology. "All right, let's get this done. How do we interface with the worm's nervous system?" Phoebe hesitated, her iridescent skin rippling with concern. "Captain, there's a problem. The neural link technology, it's designed for Rizian biology. I don't think—" "What are you saying?" Walker interrupted, his patience wearing thin. "A direct human-to-worm connection could be fatal for you," Phoebe explained, her translator struggling to convey the urgency in her voice. The team exchanged worried glances. Sergeant Rodriguez spoke up. "Sir, we can't risk losing you. There has to be another way." Walker's mind raced, the gravity of their situation weighing heavily on him. The sounds of approaching Rizian reinforcements echoed in the distance, adding to the pressure. He closed his eyes, thinking back to his days training Earth's most intelligent creatures. Suddenly, his eyes snapped open. What if we bypass the neural link entirely? Use a more primitive approach? Phoebe tilted her head, curious. "What do you mean?" "Back on Earth, I worked with animals that didn't speak our language, but we still communicated," Walker explained, his words coming faster as the idea took shape. "We could use a combination of electrical impulses and chemical signals, like pheromones, to influence the worm's behavior." Phoebe's eyes widened in understanding. "It's risky, but it might work. We'd need to synthesize the right compounds and create an improvised signaling device." Walker nodded, a grim smile on his face. "Then that's what we'll do. Rodriguez, take half the team and set up a defensive perimeter. The rest of you, help us gather what we need." As the Marines moved into position, Walker and Phoebe began repurposing their equipment. They extracted substances from the worm's biological matter, combining them with components from their gear to create a makeshift communication array. The work was painstaking, requiring intense concentration amidst the constant threat of discovery. Sweat beaded on Walker's forehead as he carefully adjusted a series of electrodes. Suddenly, a loud hiss filled the air. Bioluminescent tendrils erupted from the walls, lashing out at the team. The Marines opened fire, their weapons reports echoing through the chamber. "Keep working!" Walker shouted to Phoebe as he raised his own weapon, joining the fight. The close-quarter combat was fierce and chaotic. Walker ducked under a swinging tendril, its acidic secretions sizzling as they hit the floor where he'd stood moments before. He heard a cry of pain and turned to see Rodriguez clutching her armor smoking where it had been struck. "Rodriguez, fall back," Walker ordered, but the sergeant shook her head. "No, sir," she gritted through clenched teeth. "I can still fight. We finished this mission." As the skirmish continued, Walker and Phoebe worked feverishly to complete their device. Just as they made the final connections, a priority transmission came through from the HSS Defiant. Arya's synthetic voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, urgent update. The Zeraxian worm has altered course. It's heading directly for Earth's solar system." The news hit Walker like a physical blow. Earth, home. Everything they'd fought for was now directly in the creature's path. "We're out of time," he announced, his voice steely with perseverance. "We do this now." Walker positioned himself near a cluster of what appeared to be sensory organs, the improvised communication array humming to life in his hands. He took a deep breath, then began the delicate process of sending signals to the worm's primitive brain. The reaction was immediate and violent. The entire chamber shuddered, nearly throwing the team off their feet. Walker gritted his teeth, adjusting the signals based on the creature's responses. "It's working," Phoebe exclaimed, monitoring the worm's reactions. "Keep going." Slowly, agonizingly, a pattern began to emerge. The worm's movements became less erratic, its internal defenses less aggressive. Walker pressed on, refining his technique with each passing moment. Just as they seemed to be making real progress, the chamber's entrance exploded inward. Rizian elite troops poured through the breach, their advanced weapons blazing. "Protect the captain," Rodriguez shouted, rallying the Marines into a defensive formation around Walker and Phoebe. The air filled with plasma bolts and tracer fire as the two forces clashed. Walker forced himself to focus on his task, trusting his team to buy him the time he needed. As the battle raged around him, Walker had an epiphany. Instead of trying to control the worm, perhaps they could form a symbiotic relationship. He began to adjust his signals, attempting to convey the concept of mutual benefit to the ancient creature. Through a complex series of chemical and electrical impulses, Walker painted a picture of cooperation, humans helping the worm find new, sustainable sources of sustenance, a partnership that could ensure both species' survival. The chamber fell silent as the worm processed this new information. Then, ever so slowly, its massive body began to shift. The Rizian forces froze, their alien features contorted in confusion and fear. Walker held his breath, acutely aware that they stood at a pivotal moment in human history. As the worm's movements became more pronounced, causing panic among the Rizian troops, Walker realized they had achieved a breakthrough. But the challenge of fully controlling the ancient predator and escaping the Rizian onslaught still loomed large. Walker turned to his team, his eyes blazing with intensity. "This is our chance. We need to make it out alive," Walker said, his voice firm with perseverance. "Phoebe, you're with me. We need to reach that central console. The rest of you, provide cover fire and keep those Rizians off our backs." As if on cue, the chamber shuddered violently, nearly throwing them off their feet. The worm's massive body began to shift, its movements sending waves of motion through the organic corridors. The sudden upheaval caught both the human team and the Rizian forces off guard, momentarily halting the firefight. Walker seized the opportunity, intensifying his connection with the ancient predator through the improvised communication array. He sent a rapid series of electrical impulses and synthesized pheromones, conveying a simple yet crucial message. The Rizians were a threat to their newfound symbiosis. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Bioluminescent tendrils erupted from the walls, lashing out at the Rizian soldiers with terrifying precision. Chambers began to flood with corrosive fluids, forcing the alien troops into a frantic retreat. "It's working!" Phoebe exclaimed, her four eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. Walker nodded grimly. "Let's move. We need to reach the central nervous system before they regroup." The team pushed forward, navigating through the shifting organic landscape. What had once been straightforward corridors now pulsed and contracted unpredictably. Walker led the way, using his newfound connection with the worm to anticipate the changes in their environment. As they progressed, Sergeant Rodriguez stumbled, her face contorted in pain. The acidic burn on her arm had worsened, eating through her armor and into the flesh beneath. "Sir, I can keep going," she insisted through gritted teeth, her grip on her weapon unwavering. Walker met her gaze, seeing the fierce purpose in her eyes. "I know you can, Sergeant. We're almost there." They pressed on, the organic matter beneath their feet growing spongier with each step. The air became thick with spores, swirling in eerie patterns that seemed to follow their movements. Suddenly, the corridor opened up into a vast chamber that pulsed with bioluminescent energy. At its center stood a structure that was unmistakably artificial, a Rizian command center built directly into the worm's neural network. "There," Phoebe pointed towards a central console. "That's our target. If we can access it, we'll have full control over the worm's functions." As they approached, a tall, imposing figure stepped into view. His iridescent scales gleamed under the chamber's otherworldly light, and his multiple limbs moved with fluid grace as he raised an energy weapon. "Admiral Zorax," Phoebe whispered, her voice tinged with fear. The Rizian admiral's eyes narrowed as he took in the scene before him. "Humans," he spat, his translator barely able to convey the contempt in his voice. "How dare you defile this marvel of Rizian engineering?" Walker raised his own weapon, his mind racing to formulate a plan. "Your marvel is about to become humanity's greatest asset, Admiral." Zorax's laugh was a harsh grating sound. "You are but insects to us. Do you really think you can master the power of the Zoraxian worm?" Without warning, the Marines opened fire, their weapons reports echoing through the chamber. Zorax ducked behind the console, returning fire with deadly accuracy. "Now!" Walker shouted, grabbing Phoebe and making a dash for the central controls. As they ran, Walker felt a searing pain in his side. A stray energy bolt had grazed him, leaving a smoking furrow in his armor. He stumbled but pushed through the pain, reaching the console just as Zorax emerged from cover. The Rizian admiral charged towards them, his multiple limbs allowing him to move with inhuman speed. Walker positioned himself between Zorax and Phoebe, knowing that she was their only hope of cracking the alien security systems. "Work fast," he growled to Phoebe, raising his weapon to face the oncoming threat. Phoebe's fingers flew over the controls, her 4 eyes darting between multiple displays. "The security is incredibly complex," she said, her voice strained. "It requires Rizian biological input to fully access the system." Walker's mind raced, remembering his earlier success in communicating with the worm. "Can we bypass it? Use the worm's own biology to trick the system?" Phoebe's eyes widened in realization. "Brilliant! If we can stimulate the right neural pathways in the worm's tissues surrounding the console, we might be able to fool the security protocols." As Phoebe worked feverishly to implement this daring plan, Walker found himself locked in a deadly dance with Admiral Zorax. The Rizian's multiple limbs gave him a distinct advantage in close-quarters combat, striking from multiple angles simultaneously. Walker ducked and weaved, using every trick he had learned in his years of combat training, but he knew he was outmatched. A vicious blow sent him sprawling, his weapon skittering across the organic floor. Zorax loomed over him, energy weapon raised for the killing blow. "Your pathetic species ends here," he snarled. But as the Rizian admiral prepared to fire, the entire chamber shuddered violently. The organic walls pulsed with intense bioluminescence, and a deafening roar filled the air. Phoebe's voice cut through the chaos. "I've done it! We have control!" Walker rolled away from Zorax's shot, which went wide as the admiral struggled to maintain his balance. The worm's tissues were reacting to their new masters, shifting and reforming around them. As Walker scrambled to his feet, he saw that the Rizian command center was being absorbed into the worm's neural network, its technology merging with the creature's ancient biology. The implications were staggering. They now had access to both the worm's vast biological computing power and the advanced Rizian systems. Admiral Zorax let out a roar of fury, charging towards the console in a last-ditch effort to wrest back control. But Walker was ready for him. Using his newfound connection with the worm, he sent a mental command. A massive tendril erupted from the floor, wrapping itself around the Rizian admiral and lifting him off his feet. "It's over, Zorax," Walker said, his voice filled with grim satisfaction. "The Zoraxian worm is ours now." But as he turned to Phoebe to assess their next move, a priority alert flashed across the console's displays. The worm's new trajectory was taking it dangerously close to a populated human colony on Proxima Centauri b. Walker's moment of triumph was short-lived. They had won control of the worm, but the real challenge was just beginning. With the fate of the human colony hanging in the balance, he knew that their next actions would determine not just the outcome of this battle, but possibly the entire war. Walker's mind raced as he processed the new threat to the human colony. He opened his mouth to issue orders, but before he could speak, chaos erupted around them. Sergeant Rodriguez, her face contorted with pain and drive, launched herself at Admiral Zorax. Her sudden attack caught the Rizian off guard, sending them both crashing into a pulsating organic structure. The impact reverberated through the chamber, momentarily stunning the alien commander. "Now's our chance," Walker shouted to Phoebe, his fingers flying over the alien controls. Phoebe nodded, her 4 eyes scanning the interface rapidly. "I've identified several access points in their security system. If we can exploit them simultaneously, we might be able to bypass their protocols." As they worked, the Marine squad sprang into action. They used the worm's shifting organic corridors to their advantage, taking cover behind undulating tissues and emerging at unexpected angles to catch the Rizian defenders off guard. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, leaving scorch marks on the living walls. Walker felt a surge of pride as he watched his team adapt to the bizarre battlefield. Their quick thinking and resourcefulness showcased humanity's greatest strength, the ability to thrive in even the most hostile environments. Suddenly, the chamber shuddered violently. Walker's newfound connection with the worm allowed him to sense its growing agitation. Bioluminescent tendrils lashed out at the Rizian soldiers, while corrosive fluids began to seep from the walls, forcing the aliens to abandon their positions. "We're making progress," Phoebe announced, her voice tight with concentration. "But there's still one more layer of security we need to crack." A pained grunt drew Walker's attention. Sergeant Rodriguez lay crumpled on the floor, her armor smoking from a direct hit. Admiral Zorax loomed over her, his multiple limbs a blur of motion as he manipulated a control panel on his wrist. Alarms blared throughout the chamber, their shrill wails sending vibrations through the organic walls. Walker felt a surge of panic as he sensed the worm's trajectory changing, accelerating towards the human colony on Proxima Centauri b. "He's activated some kind of failsafe," Walker shouted, his mind racing. "We need to stop him now or millions of lives will be lost." In that moment of desperation, Walker spotted the discarded neural link interface. An idea formed in his mind. Risky, potentially fatal, but possibly their only chance. Without hesitation, he grabbed the device and placed it on his head. "Phoebe, I need you to route all available power to this interface. I'm going in." Phoebe's eyes widened in alarm. "Captain, the neural load could kill you." "We don't have a choice," Walker replied grimly, activating the device. The world exploded into light and sensation. Walker's consciousness expanded, merging with the worm's vast nervous system. He felt the creature's ancient mind touch his own, filled with curiosity and primal hunger. Layered atop this was the cold, precise architecture of Rizian technology. Walker's body convulsed as his mind struggled to process the overwhelming influx of data. He tasted colors, smelled sounds, and felt the cosmic winds of space against non-existent skin. Through it all, he fought to maintain his sense of self, to remember his mission. Distantly, he heard Phoebe's voice, felt her adjusting systems to stabilize his neural interface. The chaotic storm of sensations gradually coalesced into something more manageable. Walker seized control of the worm's primary functions, immediately altering its course away from the human colony. The chamber lurched violently as the massive creature changed direction. Rizian and human forces alike stumbled, caught off guard by the sudden shift. Walker's Marine squad used the confusion to their advantage, pushing forward to secure positions around the central console. As Walker deepened his connection with the worm, he began to understand the true scope of its capabilities. This wasn't just a weapon or a ship, it was a living supercomputer, capable of processing and storing unimaginable amounts of data. Through the worm's vast databanks, Walker accessed critical information about Rizian weaknesses and battle strategies. Without hesitation, he broadcast this intelligence to all nearby human forces, giving them a desperately needed advantage in the larger conflict. The mental strain was immense. Blood trickled from Walker's nose and his muscles spasmed uncontrollably. He could feel Phoebe working frantically to stabilize his condition, but he knew his time was limited. Just as he thought he had things under control, Walker felt a new presence stirring within the neural link. The worm's consciousness, awakened by their unprecedented connection, began to assert itself. Walker found himself locked in a mental struggle with the ancient creature, fighting to maintain control while simultaneously trying to forge a symbiotic relationship. Images flashed through his mind. Countless worlds consumed, civilizations risen and fallen, the vast emptiness of space. The worm's existence spanned eons, and its hunger was as old as the universe itself. Yet there was also curiosity there, a capacity for growth and change that gave Walker hope. As the battle raged around him, Walker stood at a crossroads. He had to find a way to solidify his control over the worm, repel the Rizian forces, and survive the crushing mental strain of the neural interface. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, dependent on his ability to tame an ally with this ancient, powerful being. With gritted teeth and iron will, Walker pushed deeper into the connection. He had come too far to fail now. Whatever the cost, he would see this through to the end. With gritted teeth and iron will, Walker pushed deeper into the connection. He had come too far to fail now. Whatever the cost, he would see this through to the end. As Walker delved further into the neural link, the worm's consciousness surged against his own, threatening to overwhelm him. His nose began to bleed profusely, and his body convulsed violently. The taste of copper filled his mouth as he fought to maintain control. "Captain, your vitals are critical." Phoebe's voice cut through the chaos, her four eyes darting between Walker and the control panels. Her fingers flew across the alien interface, adjusting parameters in a desperate attempt to stabilize the neural connection. "I'm trying to modulate the signal, but the load on your brain is unprecedented." Walker could barely hear her over the cacophony of sensations flooding his mind. Colors swirled and sounds pulsed through his consciousness as he grappled with the ancient entity. But amidst the tumult, fragments of memory began to coalesce, not his own, but the worm's. He saw vast stretches of space, countless worlds and civilizations rising and falling. The worm had not always been a weapon. It was a being of exploration, of discovery. This revelation sparked an idea in Walker's fading consciousness. Drawing upon years of experience in animal training, Walker began to project simple, repetitive neural patterns towards the worm's agitated mind. He focused on calm, curiosity, and mutual understanding. Slowly, the violent resistance began to subside. As Walker established a more stable connection, he gained access to the worm's vast databanks. His eyes widened as he uncovered crucial information about Rizian technology, shield specifications, faster-than-light drive capabilities, and more. "Phoebe!" Walker gasped, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "I'm transmitting data to the fleet. This could turn the tide of the entire war." Around them, the chamber had become a maelstrom of chaos. The Marine squad, led by a wounded but determined Sergeant Rodriguez, held their defensive perimeter against the onslaught of Rizian forces. Energy weapons fire crisscrossed the organic chamber, leaving scorch marks on the pulsating walls. Admiral Zorax, his multiple limbs a blur of motion, rallied his troops for a final desperate assault. "Destroy the humans!" he roared, his translator unable to fully convey the fury in his voice. "We cannot let them control the worm." As the battle raged, Walker sensed a new presence stirring within the neural link. The worm's consciousness, fully awakened by their unprecedented connection, began to assert itself. But instead of hostility, Walker felt curiosity, a tentative reaching out. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the chamber. Walker's newfound connection with the worm allowed him to sense the source of the disturbance instantly. His blood ran cold as he realized what was happening. "Zorax has activated a self-destruct sequence," Walker shouted, his voice hoarse. "We have minutes before this whole place goes up." The chamber erupted into even greater chaos. Rizian soldiers began to flee, abandoning their posts in search of escape pods. The human Marines tightened their formation, preparing for whatever came next. Walker's mind raced. He guided the worm's internal defenses, targeting the Rizian explosive devices scattered throughout its body. At the same time, he used the creature's biomechanical systems to begin ejecting the remaining Rizian forces. Through the haze of pain and mental strain, Walker saw Sergeant Rodriguez launch herself at Admiral Zorax. The two grappled near an emergency escape pod, tumbling inside just as it sealed shut and ejected from the worm's body. With Zorax gone, Walker focused all his remaining strength on neutralizing the self-destruct sequence. His consciousness merged more fully with the worm's, their combined intellect racing against time to isolate and disable each explosive device. 10 seconds, Phoebe called out, her voice tight with tension. Walker felt as if his skull would split open. Blood poured from his nose and ears as he pushed himself beyond all human limits. In perfect synchronization with the worm, he targeted the final explosive. 5 seconds. The world narrowed to a single point of focus. Walker could feel the worm's massive body tensing, preparing for annihilation. 2, 1. Silence fell over the chamber. For a heartbeat, no one dared to breathe. Then Walker's eyes snapped open. "It's done," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "We've stopped it." A ragged cheer went up from the Marine squad, but their celebration was short-lived as Walker slumped forward, blood streaming from his eyes. "Captain," Phoebe cried out, rushing to his side, "we need to disengage the neural link now. Your brain can't take much more of this." But Walker knew he couldn't stop, not yet. Through his connection with the worm, he could sense the Rizian fleet regrouping, preparing for a final assault. Humanity needed every advantage it could get. With trembling hands, Walker reached out to the control panel. "Not yet," he gasped. "We have to finish this." He guided the worm towards the Rizian fleet, its massive tendrils unfurling in the cold vacuum of space. The human fleet, armed with the intelligence Walker had provided, launched a coordinated attack. As the battle raged around them, Walker felt his grip on consciousness slipping. The line between his mind and the worms began to blur. He could feel the vastness of space, the thrill of exploration that had driven the worm for eons. "Captain, please!" Phoebe's voice seemed to come from very far away. "You're losing yourself." Walker knew she was right, but as he watched the Rizian ships crumble before the combined might of humanity and the worm, he allowed himself a small smile. They were going to win. He had done it. With the last of his strength, Walker began the process of disengaging from the neural link. But as he did so, he felt a tug from the worm's consciousness. Not a threat, but an invitation, a promise of discovery, of worlds beyond imagination. Walker hesitated, caught between two destinies. The fate of humanity secured, he now faced a choice that would define not just his future, but potentially the course of human exploration for generations to come. As his vision began to fade, Walker made his decision. He couldn't abandon his mission now, not when victory was within reach. With a Herculean effort, he pushed back against the worm's consciousness, reasserting his own identity. "Not yet," he gasped, blood trickling from his nose. "We're not finished." Phoebe's eyes widened in alarm. "Captain, your neural patterns are destabilizing rapidly. We need to disengage now." Walker shook his head, his fingers flying over the control panel. Through his connection with the worm, he sensed the Rizian fleet regrouping, preparing for a final, desperate assault. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away. Suddenly, a flood of information surged through the neural link. Walker's eyes widened as he uncovered crucial data about the Rizian command structure. At the heart of their fleet lay a vessel called the Zarkoth, the linchpin of their entire war effort. "There," Walker said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's our target." He guided the worm through the chaos of battle, its massive form weaving between volleys of energy weapons. The creature's advanced sensory capabilities, now an extension of Walker's own consciousness, allowed him to pinpoint the Zarkoth's location with uncanny precision. As they closed in on their target, the Rizian fleet seemed to realize the danger. A hail of weapons fire converged on the worm, its outer layers beginning to char and peel away under the intense barrage. Walker gritted his teeth, feeling every impact as if it were striking his own body. "Hull integrity compromised in multiple sections," Phoebe reported, her voice tight with tension. "Captain, we can't sustain this level of damage for long." Walker nodded grimly, sweat beading on his forehead as he fought to maintain control. "Just a little closer," he muttered. Suddenly, the space around them lit up with a web of crackling energy. The Rizians had deployed a massive energy net, its tendrils wrapping around the worm's massive form. Walker felt the creature's panic and pain as the net began to burn into its flesh. "No!" Walker shouted, his body convulsing as he struggled against the neural feedback. "We can't stop now!" Just as all seemed lost, a familiar voice crackled over the comm system. "This is Captain Chen of the HSS Defiant. We're moving to assist. Hold on, Walker." Through the worm's sensors, Walker watched in awe as his old ship maneuvered between them and the energy net. The Defiant's advanced shields flared brilliantly as they absorbed a portion of the net's energy, creating a gap in its coverage. Seizing the opportunity, Walker directed the worm through the opening. As they broke free, he instinctively reached out with the creature's tendrils, grasping onto the Defiant. The two unlikely allies surged forward together, the worm's massive bulk shielding the human vessel from Rizian counterattacks. With a clear path to the Zarkoth now open, Walker initiated the final phase of his desperate plan. He channeled the worm's internal fluids, a corrosive substance capable of eating through even the toughest alloys, into a series of biomissiles. "Targeting systems locked," Walker announced, his voice hoarse. "Firing now!" The biomissiles launched in rapid succession, arcing through space towards the Rizian command ship. The Jarkoth's shields flared briefly before collapsing under the onslaught. Walker watched with grim satisfaction as the corrosive projectiles ate through the ship's hull, disabling its key systems. As the Rizian command structure crumbled, Walker felt a surge of triumph. Using a combination of the worm's communication array and the Defiant's transmitters, he broadcast an ultimatum to the enemy fleet. "Attention, Rizian forces!" Walker's voice boomed across all frequencies. "Your command ship is neutralized. Surrender immediately, or face the full destructive potential of the Xeraxian worm." For a moment, silence reigned across the battlefield. Then, one by one, Rizian ships began to power down their weapon systems. The tide of war had turned decisively in humanity's favor. But victory came at a steep cost. The intense final assault had pushed Walker's neural link far beyond its intended limits. He felt his consciousness beginning to fragment, threatening to dissolve into the vast, alien mind of the worm. "Captain?" Phoebe's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Your neural patterns are collapsing. We need to get you out now." Walker tried to respond, but found he couldn't form the words. His vision swam, the lines between his own thoughts and the worm's becoming increasingly blurred. He could feel the creature's ancient consciousness pressing in on him from all sides, threatening to absorb him completely. Through the haze of his fading awareness, Walker sensed the Defiant extending a specially designed docking tube towards the worm's neural center. He knew they were attempting to extract him, but the worm's internal defenses, viewing the intrusion as a threat, began to activate. As Walker's team worked frantically to disengage him from the neural interface, he felt the worm's reluctance to let him go. The creature had tasted the power of symbiosis with a human mind and was loath to relinquish it. In this moment of crisis, a new voice cut through the chaos. "This is Dr. Elias Venn," the transmission crackled. "I have a potential solution, but we need to act fast." Walker, barely clinging to consciousness, sensed a flurry of activity around him. Through the neural link, he caught fragments of a desperate plan involving a prototype neural transfer device. As the extraction team raced against time, Walker found himself balanced on a knife's edge between two vastly different fates. Would he return as the hero who had saved humanity, or be forever merged with the ancient space creature that had become both ally and threat? The answer lay in the hands of his crew and the untested technology they now wielded. As darkness closed in around him, Walker's last coherent thought was a fervent hope that whatever came next, it would all have been worth it. As darkness closed in around him, Walker's last coherent thought was a fervent hope that whatever came next, it would all have been worth it. His consciousness teetered on the brink of oblivion, the line between his mind and the worm's ancient intellect blurring beyond recognition. Suddenly, a jolt of electricity coursed through his neural interface. Walker's eyes snapped open, his body convulsing as Dr. Elias Venn's team initiated their desperate plan. Through the haze of pain and confusion, he could hear the frantic voices of the extraction team. "Neural patterns destabilizing," shouted Chief Engineer Marcus Reeves, his fingers flying over the control panel. "We're losing him." Phoebe's voice cut through the chaos. "Initiating controlled shutdown of non-essential systems. It should buy us some time." Walker felt the worm's consciousness recoil, its vast palms sweating from the sudden loss of sensory input. He could sense its growing agitation, a primal fear of the unknown threatening to overwhelm their fragile alliance. As the creature's massive body began to undulate, Walker caught glimpses of the battle's aftermath through its sensory organs. The human fleet scattered, maintaining a safe distance as repair drones swarmed around the Defiant's docking tube. "Captain, if you can hear me, we need you to focus." Dr. Venn's voice pierced through the mental fog. "We're attempting a partial consciousness transfer. You need to hold on to your sense of self." Walker struggled to comply, grasping at the fragments of his identity. But with each passing moment, more of his memories and experiences merged with the worm's millennia of existence. He saw countless worlds, experienced the thrill of cosmic exploration through the creature's alien senses. A new voice joined the cacophony, speaking in the complex harmonics of the Rizian language. "The tertiary neural cluster is becoming unstable," it said, the words automatically translating in Walker's mind. We need to reroute the synaptic pathways before initiating the transfer. Through bleary eyes, Walker saw a Rizian scientist working alongside Dr. Venn. Her presence barely registered as odd in his current state. Dr. Zira, we're ready to begin the transfer, Venn announced. Initiating sequence now. A searing pain tore through Walker's skull as the neural transfer device activated. He felt as if his very essence was being ripped apart, stretched between two vastly different forms of existence. The worm's consciousness pushed back, resisting the separation. In that moment of excruciating clarity, Walker realized the magnitude of what was happening. They weren't just trying to save him. They were attempting to preserve a piece of his consciousness within the worm itself. With monumental effort, Walker exerted one final act of will. He reached out through the neural link, directing the worm's internal systems to assist in the transfer process. The creature's vast computational power turned inward, its biomechanical components reconfiguring to support the complex operation. Alarms blared throughout the Defiant as the massive influx of data threatened to overwhelm its systems. Chief Engineer Reeves's voice rose above the din. Rerouting data flow through the main reactor. It's our only chance. The ship shuddered, its hull groaning under the strain. Walker felt a moment of vertigo as his awareness split. Part of him still connected to his physical body, while another part flowed into the worm's neural network. Physical extraction commencing, Phoebe announced. Stand by for emergency disconnect. With a violent jerk, Walker felt himself being pulled away from the worm's neural interface. The creature's tendrils, which had been interwoven with his nervous system, retracted in a burst of bioluminescent energy. As the last connection severed, the neural transfer device overloaded. A blinding flash of light filled the chamber, accompanied by a deafening explosion. Walker's world went dark as his unconscious form was dragged into the Defiant's docking tube. Amidst the chaos, the Xeraxian worm recoiled, its massive body twisting in the void of space. The human fleet watched in tense silence as the ancient creature slowly curled in on itself, entering a state of dormancy. Inside the Defiant's medical bay, Dr. Venn and his team worked feverishly to stabilize Walker's neural patterns. Banks of advanced medical equipment surrounded the captain's prone form, monitoring every fluctuation in his brainwaves. Neural activity is erratic but present, Dr. Venn reported, his face etched with concern. We've managed to preserve his core consciousness, but the extent of the damage is substantial. As the medical team fought to save Walker's life, Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the ship's comm system. Status report, Doctor. Did we succeed? Dr. Venn hesitated, his eyes fixed on the readings before him. It's complicated, Admiral. Captain Walker is alive, but the lines between his mind and the worms have been irreversibly blurred. As for the partial consciousness transfer to the creature itself, we won't know if it was successful until it awakens. On the bridge of her flagship, Admiral Chen absorbed this information with a grim expression. She turned to her communications officer. Broadcast to all ships. Maintain defensive perimeter around the worm. And get me a secure channel to Rizian High Command. We need to discuss the formation of a joint scientific team. As the human fleet settled into a watchful orbit around the dormant Xeraxian worm, Dr. Zira found herself summoned to a hastily convened meeting with Admiral Chen. The Rizian xenobiologist's mind raced with the implications of what they had witnessed and the potential consequences of their actions. In the Defiant's medical bay, Captain Isaac Walker lay motionless, his mind trapped in a limbo between human and alien consciousness. The monitors tracking his neural activity pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm, hinting at the profound changes wrought by his encounter with the ancient space predator. As the medical team worked tirelessly to unlock the secrets of Walker's transformed mind, a new chapter in the saga of human-alien relations was about to unfold, one that would challenge the very definitions of consciousness, identity, and the boundaries of interspecies cooperation. Cooperation. As the human fleet maintained its vigil over the dormant Xeraxian worm, the Defiant's medical bay buzzed with frantic activity. Dr. Elias Venn and his team worked tirelessly, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of advanced medical equipment surrounding Captain Walker's motionless form. Neural patterns stabilizing, but these formations, Dr. Venn muttered, gesturing to a holographic display of Walker's brain. I've never seen anything like it. The captain's body twitched occasionally, his eyes darting rapidly beneath closed lids. The monitors tracking his neural activity pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm, a visual representation of the profound changes wrought by his encounter with the ancient space predator. Meanwhile, on the bridge of her flagship, Admiral Chen surveyed the tense scene before her. The massive form of the Xeraxian worm floated motionlessly against the backdrop of stars, surrounded by a ring of containment vessels. Their energy-dampening field shimmered faintly, a precautionary measure against any sudden movements from the creature. "Status report on Proxima Centauri B," Chen ordered, her voice tight with concern. A young officer responded immediately. "Critical, Admiral. The colony's shield is failing. Radiation levels are rising rapidly." Chen's heart made as she weighed her options. The fleet's resources were stretched thin, divided between maintaining the perimeter around the worm and managing the surrendered Rizian forces. But she couldn't abandon the colonists to their fate. With a decisive nod, Chen issued her orders. "Deploy the Intrepid Task Force to Proxima Centauri B. Priority is shield repair and evacuation, if necessary." As the small task force broke away from the main fleet, the tension on the bridge ratcheted up a notch. Every officer knew that their defensive capabilities had just been significantly reduced. Hours passed in uneasy silence. Then, without warning, alarms blared across the fleet. The Xeraxian worm's massive body began to pulse with bioluminescent patterns, its tendrils twitching and stretching. "Containment fields at 80% and dropping," shouted a sensor officer. "The creature's energy output is off the charts." On the Defiant, Dr. Venn's team scrambled to stabilize Walker, as his vital signs spiked in sync with the worm's renewed activity. The captain's body arched off the bed, his fingers clawing at the air. "The synaptic formations are lighting up like a Christmas tree," Dr. Venn reported, his voice strained. "It's as if he's trying to reconnect with the worm." Dr. Zira, the Rizian xenobiologist, burst into the medical bay, her eyes wide with excitement and fear. "The worm is responding to the colony's distress," she announced breathlessly. "I believe Captain Walker's partial consciousness transfer has given it a sense of human empathy." Before anyone could respond, Walker's eyes snapped open. He sat up abruptly, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. When he spoke, his voice resonated with an otherworldly timbre that sent chills down the spines of everyone present. "The Song of Stars calls, we must answer." Walker swung his legs off the bed, his movements becoming more fluid with each passing second. Dr. Venn moved to restrain him, but Walker brushed him aside with surprising strength. "Captain, you need to lie down," Venn pleaded, signaling for assistance. Walker's gaze swept the room, unfocused yet somehow seeing beyond the confines of the medical bay. "No time," he rasped. "The colony! We must go." As the medical team struggled to contain Walker, Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the ship's comm system. "All hands, battle stations! The worm is breaking free of containment." Outside, the Xeraxian worm's bioluminescent pulses intensified, creating patterns that mirrored the electromagnetic storms raging around Proxima Centauri B. Its tendrils pushed against the containment fields, causing them to flicker and waver. On the bridge of her flagship, Admiral Chen faced the most crucial decision of her career. The Proxima Centauri colony needed immediate assistance, but allowing the worm to move freely posed an enormous risk. As she opened her mouth to give the order to reinforce the containment field, a new voice cut through the chaos. "Admiral Chen, this is Dr. Zira." The Rizian scientist's voice was urgent but clear. "The worm isn't trying to escape. It's attempting to help the colony. We must let it go." Chen's finger hovered over the command console, her mind racing. Years of military training screamed at her to neutralize the potential threat, but something in Dr. Zira's voice gave her pause. In that moment of hesitation, the decision was made for her. The Xeraxian worm's energy output surged, overwhelming the containment fields. Its massive body unfurled in space, tendrils stretching out towards the distant star of Proxima Centauri. "All ships, hold fire!" Chen barked, silencing the panicked chatter on the command frequency. "Track its movement, but do not engage. Repeat, do not engage." As the worm began to move, picking up speed with alarming rapidity, Walker broke free from his restraints on the Defiant. He staggered towards the bridge, his eyes glowing with the same bioluminescence as the creature outside. "We go to sing the shield song," Walker intoned, his voice a blend of human and something far more ancient. "To calm the star storm and protect the young ones." The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as Walker approached the main viewport, placing his hand against the transparent alloy. Outside, the Zoraxian worm paused its forward movement, one massive tendril extending towards the Defiant. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stand still. Then Walker spoke again, his voice echoing with the wisdom of countless millennia. "Trust in the Song of Stars. We will return." With those words, the worm's tendril enveloped the Defiant, cradling the ship gently. Before anyone could react, both the ancient creature and the human vessel vanished in a burst of bioluminescent energy, leaving behind a stunned fleet and a host of unanswered questions. As the light of their departure faded, Admiral Chen found her voice. "All ships, prepare to follow. Whatever happens next, we face it together." The human fleet, now joined by their former Rizian adversaries, began to move. Their destination, Proxima Centauri B, where the fate of a colony, a captain, and perhaps the future of interspecies cooperation hung in the balance. The human fleet, now joined by their former Rizian adversaries, began to move towards Proxima Centauri B. However, their journey was abruptly interrupted as chaos erupted aboard the Defiant. Captain Walker's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. He sat up abruptly, his movements jerky and uncoordinated at first. Dr. Venn rushed to his side, attempting to restrain him. "Captain, you need to lie down," Venn pleaded, signaling for assistance. But Walker's strength had been enhanced by his neural connection with the Zoraxian worm. He brushed aside the doctor's hands with surprising ease, his movements becoming more fluid with each passing second. "No time," Walker rasped, his voice resonating with an alien timbre. "The colony, we must go." As the medical team struggled to contain Walker, Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the ship's comm system. "All hands, battle stations. The worm is breaking free of containment." Outside, the Zoraxian worm's bioluminescent pulses intensified, creating patterns that mirrored the electromagnetic storms raging around Proxima Centauri B. Its tendrils pushed against the containment fields, causing them to flicker and waver. On the bridge of her flagship, Admiral Chen faced a crucial decision. The Proxima Centauri colony needed immediate assistance, but allowing the worm to move freely posed an enormous risk. As she weighed her options, Dr. Zira's urgent voice cut through the chaos. "Admiral Chen, the worm isn't trying to escape. It's attempting to help the colony. We must let it go." Chen's finger hovered over the command console, her mind racing. In that moment of hesitation, Walker broke free from his restraints on the Defiant. He staggered towards the bridge, evading security personnel with unnaturally quick and precise movements. As Walker burst onto the bridge, Chen made a bold decision. "All ships, create a corridor between the worm and Proxima Centauri B. Maintain defensive positions, but do not engage." The fleet began to reposition, opening a path for the massive creature. Walker approached the main control console, his eyes fixed on the monitor showing the Zoraxian worm. Chen, recognizing the potential for crucial insight, allowed him to approach. Walker placed his hands on the console, and to everyone's astonishment, he began interfacing directly with the ship's systems. The Defiant's computers lit up with activity as Walker established a connection between the ship and the worm. "The worm, it wants to help," Walker spoke, his voice a blend of human and something far more ancient. "It can shield the colony from the radiation while we repair their defenses." Chen absorbed this information, quickly assessing the risks and potential benefits. "Allow the worm to approach Proxima Centauri B," she ordered. "All ships, escort formation. Protect the worm and nearby vessels from any complications." The Zoraxian worm began to move, its tendrils extending as it propelled itself through space. As it neared the planet, it encountered the turbulent electromagnetic storm that had prevented the Intrepid from reaching the colony. However, the worm's unique biology allowed it to navigate through the storm unscathed. The bridge crew watched in awe as the creature's massive body began to wrap around the planet, creating a living shield against the deadly radiation. With the immediate threat neutralized, Chen wasted no time in deploying engineering teams to the planet's surface. "Get those teams down there and start repairs on the colony's defense systems," Chen commanded. "The worm's buying us time, but we don't know how long it can maintain that shield." As the engineering teams descended to the planet's surface, protected by the worm's improvised shield, Walker's condition on the Defiant began to stabilize. The glow in his eyes dimmed, and he regained full control of his faculties. Dr. Venn, who had followed Walker to the bridge, monitored his neural patterns closely. "Captain, your neural activity is unlike anything I've ever seen," Venn reported, his voice a mix of concern and fascination. "You've retained an unprecedented level of connection with the worm." Walker nodded, his eyes now clear but filled with a new depth of understanding. "I can sense its thoughts, its intentions. It's remarkable. The worm is ancient, with knowledge spanning millennia, and now it wants to help us." As news of the worm's actions spread throughout the human fleet and the surrendered Rizian forces, a palpable shift in perception began to take place. The once feared creature was now being seen in a new light, its vast capabilities and newfound empathy opening up possibilities that no one had dared imagine before. Dr. Zira approached Admiral Chen, her eyes alight with excitement. "Admiral, this is an unprecedented opportunity. We need to form a specialized research team to study the symbiosis between Captain Walker and the worm. The potential for advancing interspecies communication is enormous." Chen nodded, her mind already racing with the diplomatic implications of recent events. "Agreed, Doctor. And we need to prepare for negotiations with the Rizian leadership. This worm might just be the key to lasting peace between our species." As the immediate crisis at Proxima Centauri b was being addressed, new challenges and opportunities arose. The human fleet now faced the complex task of managing a living superweapon, continuing negotiations with the Rizians, and exploring the full extent of Walker's newfound abilities. Walker stood at the viewport, gazing at the worm as it continued to shield the colony. He placed his hand against the transparent alloy, feeling a connection that transcended physical boundaries. The captain knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in humanity's journey among the stars, one that would redefine their place in the cosmos and challenge everything they thought they knew about life in the universe around them. As the immediate crisis at Proxima Centauri b subsided, the human fleet found itself facing new challenges and opportunities. The Zoraxian worm's unexpected assistance had opened up a realm of possibilities that Admiral Chen and her crew were eager to explore. Captain Isaac Walker's recovery progressed rapidly, his unique neural connection to the worm accelerating his healing process. Dr. Venn monitored him closely, fascinated by the changes in Walker's physiology. "Your cellular regeneration rate is off the charts, Captain," Venn remarked, studying a holographic display of Walker's brain activity. "And your synaptic responses, they're unlike anything I've ever seen in a human." Walker flexed his fingers, feeling strength and agility he'd never known before. "It's as if I can feel the worm's presence, even at this distance," he said, his voice tinged with wonder and a hint of uncertainty. Admiral Chen recognized the potential in Walker's newfound abilities. She appointed him as the primary liaison between humanity and the ancient creature, a decision that would prove pivotal in the days to come. On the engineering deck of the Defiant, Chief Engineer Marcus Reeves and his team worked tirelessly to develop a more sophisticated interface for communicating with the worm. They salvaged Rizian technology from the captured command ship, integrating it with human systems. "Pass me that quantum resonator," Reeves called out to his assistant, his hands deep in a tangle of wires and circuitry. "If we can synchronize the Rizian psionic amplifiers with our subspace transmitters, we might just be able to establish a stable long-range link." As the crew of the Defiant focused on unlocking the secrets of interspecies communication, Admiral Chen found herself inundated with requests from human colonies across the sector. News of the worm's actions at Proxima Centauri b had spread rapidly, and now everyone wanted the creature's aid. Chen rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of command more heavily than ever. "We need to establish clear protocols for evaluating these requests," she told her senior staff. "The worm isn't a tool to be used indiscriminately. We need to consider the long-term implications of each intervention." The admiral's concerns were well-founded. The region's surrender negotiations had entered a critical phase, and Chen knew that their handling of the worm would be crucial in securing a lasting peace. She made the bold decision to appoint Walker as a lead negotiator, hoping his connection with the worm would provide an edge in the talks. The Rizian delegation, led by Ambassador Krell, arrived on the Defiant with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Krell's eyes darted nervously around the conference room, taking in the human officers and lingering on Walker. "We appreciate your willingness to come to the table, Ambassador," Walker began, his voice calm and measured. "We believe that together, we can forge a new era of cooperation between our peoples." Krell's antennae twitched, a sign of agitation among his species. "Pretty words, Captain Walker. But how can we trust a species that now controls a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems? The Zoraxian worm is too powerful to be left in the hands of any one faction." Before Walker could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Admiral Chen's voice came over the intercom, tense and urgent. "Captain Walker to the bridge immediately. We have a situation." As Walker hurried to the bridge, leaving the Rizian delegation under guard, he found Chen staring grimly at a holographic display of a distant star system. "We've received a distress call from Epsilon Eridani IV, Chen explained, her voice tight. "A human outpost there is under attack from some kind of alien fungal infection. It's overwhelming their environmental systems, and they don't have much time." Walker studied the data scrolling across the screen, his enhanced cognitive abilities allowing him to process the information at an unprecedented rate. "The fleet is stretched thin," he observed, "and the worm is still recovering from its efforts at Proxima Centauri b." Chen nodded, her expression grim. "We need a solution, and fast. Any ideas, Captain?" Walker closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind to the vast, alien consciousness of the worm. Images and sensations flooded his awareness, eons of space travel, encounters with countless life forms, and a deep well of biological knowledge. His eyes snapped open. "The worm," he said, his voice filled with certainty. "It's encountered something similar before. If I can establish a deeper neural link, we might be able to synthesize a countermeasure." Dr. Venn, who had joined them on the bridge, shook his head vehemently. "Absolutely not, Captain. We have no idea what another deep connection might do to your mind or body. The risk is too great." Walker turned to Chen, his eyes pleading. "Admiral, this might be our only chance to save that colony. We have to try." Chen looked from Walker to Venn and back, weighing the risks against the potential benefits. The fate of an entire colony hung in the balance, as did the delicate peace negotiations with the Rizians. And beneath it all, the question of Walker's humanity loomed large. After a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Chen nodded. "Do it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But be careful, Isaac. We need you to come back to us." As Walker prepared for another neural link with the worm, tension rippled through the crew of the Defiant. Some viewed his growing connection to the alien entity with fear and suspicion, while others saw it as humanity's best hope for the future. In the medical bay, Dr. Zira, the Rizian xenobiologist, stepped forward. "I can help," she offered, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "My knowledge of Zoraxian biology might prove useful in stabilizing the link." Walker nodded gratefully as he lay back on the medical bed, electrodes being attached to his temples. He caught a glimpse of Ambassador Krell watching from the doorway, the Rizian's expression unreadable. As the neural link was initiated, Walker's body arched off the bed, his eyes rolling back in his head. The ship's lights flickered, and through the viewport they could see the worm's massive form pulsing with intense bioluminescence. Walker's consciousness plunged into the vast ocean of the worm's mind, searching desperately for the knowledge that could save Epsilon Eridani IV. The fate of the colony, the peace talks, and perhaps Walker's very humanity hung in the balance as human and alien minds merged once again. More as one. Time seemed to stretch and compress, the boundaries between self and other blurring in a kaleidoscope of shared consciousness. Suddenly, Walker gasped, his eyes flying open. The ethereal glow that had suffused them moments before faded, leaving behind a gaze that was unmistakably human, yet somehow altered. He sat up abruptly, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. "I have it," he rasped, his voice hoarse from disuse. "The cure. I know how to synthesize it." Dr. Venn rushed to Walker's side, tricorder in hand. "Easy, Captain. Your vital signs are all over the place. We need to stabilize you before—" But Walker was already pushing himself off the bed, his legs trembling beneath him. "No time," he insisted. "Epsilon Eridani Fops. They need this now." Admiral Chen stepped forward, her face a mask of concern. "Walker, what did you see?" The captain's eyes unfocused for a moment, as if seeing something beyond the confines of the medical bay. "The worm. It's encountered this before. Eons ago. The cure. It's in the worm itself. Enzymes in its digestive system." Chief Engineer Reeves, who had been hovering nearby, snapped to attention. "Enzymes? We might be able to extract those, but we'll need a way to collect them safely." "Get on it, Reeves," Chen ordered. "Assemble your best team. We need a collection device, and we need it yesterday." As Reeves hurried out, Dr. Zira approached Walker, her alien features set in a look of fascination. "Captain, the neural link you established, it's unprecedented. The level of information transfer, the depth of the connection, it's rewriting everything we thought we knew about interspecies communication." Walker nodded, wincing as a wave of pain washed over him. "It's more than that, Doctor. It's changing me. I can feel it." Before Zira could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Chen's communicator chirped urgently. "Admiral," came the voice of her tactical officer, "we're receiving multiple distress calls. Human colonies across the sector are requesting immediate assistance, and the Rizian delegation is demanding an audience." Chen's teeth clenched. "Tell the Rizians I'll meet with them shortly. Walker, can you make it to the bridge?" The captain nodded, though his complexion had grown pale. As they made their way through the corridors of the Defiant, Walker's steps became increasingly unsteady. By the time they reached the bridge, he was leaning heavily on Dr. Venn for support. Ambassador Krell was waiting for them, his antennae twitching with hardly restrained agitation. "Admiral Chen," he began, his voice clipped, "my government demands assurances. This worm of yours, we've seen what it can do. How do we know you won't turn it against us?" Chen opened her mouth to respond, but Walker stepped forward, his eyes locking with the Rizian ambassadors. "The worm isn't a weapon, Ambassador. It's a living being with its own will. We're learning to communicate with it, to understand it, and right now it wants to help." Krell's eyes narrowed. "And we're simply supposed to take your word for that, Captain. The word of a man who's clearly been altered by his contact with this creature?" Before Walker could reply, he staggered, a cry of pain escaping his lips. Dr. Venn was at his side in an instant, easing him into the captain's chair. "His neural patterns are destabilizing," Venn reported, his voice tight with concern. "We need to get him back to medical." But Walker waved him off, his eyes fixed on the main view screen where the worm's massive form undulated against the backdrop of stars. "No, we have to finish this. Epsilon Eridania Foy, they're running out of time." As if in response to his words, Chief Engineer Reeves' voice came over the comm. "Admiral, we've done it. We've jury-rigged a collection device for the enzymes. It's not pretty, but it should do the job." Chen nodded sharply. "Good work, Reeves. Prepare for immediate deployment." She turned to her helm officer. "Set a course for Epsilon Eridani Fa, maximum warp, and signal Lieutenant Commander Harper. We'll need his piloting skills to navigate the asteroid field." As the Defiant leapt into warp, Walker's condition continued to deteriorate. His body shook with seizures, each one more violent than the last. Dr. Venn worked feverishly to stabilize him, but the captain's enhanced physiology resisted conventional treatments. "His mind is still linked to the worm," Dr. Zira observed, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and concern. "It's as if they're becoming one entity. Ambassador Krell watched the unfolding scene with growing unease. "Admiral," he said, his voice low, "if your captain loses control, if this worm turns hostile—" Chen cut him off with a sharp gesture. "We'll cross that bridge if we come to it, Ambassador. Right now, we have a colony to save." As the Defiant dropped out of warp near Epsilon Eridani IV, the view screen filled with the image of the beleaguered planet. The fungal infection was visible even from orbit, vast swaths of the surface covered in a sickly, pulsating mass. Walker stirred in his chair, his eyes glowing with that otherworldly light once more. "The worm," he whispered. "It's the only way. We have to send it down." Chen looked at him sharply. "You want to send the worm into the planet's atmosphere? Is that even possible?" Walker nodded weakly. "It can do it. We know it can." As the crew of the Defiant grappled with this unprecedented plan, the Zaraxian worm began to move, its massive form gracefully arcing towards the stricken planet. Walker's body tensed, his face contorting in concentration as he silently communicated with the ancient creature. The bridge fell silent as they watched the worm descend, its body beginning to glow red-hot as it entered the atmosphere. On the planet's surface, the colonists looked up in awe and terror at the sight of the massive being emerging from the clouds, trailing fire and light. As the worm released the antifungal agent, a visible change swept across the planet's surface. The fungal growth began to recede, withering away under the potent assault of the engineered enzymes. But the victory was short-lived. As the worm pulled away from the planet, its movements became erratic, its bioluminescent patterns flickering chaotically. On the bridge of the Defiant, Walker collapsed, his body convulsing violently. "Medical emergency on the bridge!" Dr. Venn shouted, rushing to the captain's side. As he worked to stabilize Walker, the ship's sensors blared a new warning. "Admiral," the science officer reported, her voice tense. "The worm, it's in distress. Its biological systems are failing." Chen looked from the ailing worm to her convulsing captain, the weight of command pressing down on her like never before. The fate of Walker, the worm, and the fragile peace they had fought so hard to achieve now hung in the balance. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a chilling thought began to form. What if saving one meant losing the other? Other? Chen's mind raced, searching for a solution that would save both. Suddenly, Walker's body went limp, his eyes rolling back in his head. Dr. Venn cursed under his breath, his fingers flying over the medical tricorder. "He's crashing! We need to get him to medical bay now!" As the medical team rushed Walker off the bridge, Chen turned to her tactical officer. "Status of the worm?" "Critical, Admiral," came the terse reply. "Its biological systems are failing across the board. We're losing it." Chen's expression resolute. She had mere moments to make a decision that could alter the course of human history. "Helm, bring us alongside the worm. Reeves!" "Here, Admiral," the chief engineer's voice crackled over the comm. "I need options. How can we stabilize the worm's condition?" There was a pause filled only by the frantic beeping of bridge consoles. "We might be able to use the deflector dish to emit a specialized radiation," Reeves said hesitantly. "It could potentially accelerate the worm's natural healing process, but what, Chief?" "It would require diverting significant power from our defensive systems. We'd be vulnerable if the Rizians decide to attack." Chen's eyes flicked to Ambassador Krell, who stood rigid with tension. "Do it," she ordered, "and get me a direct line to Walker's medical bay." As Reeves and his team worked to reconfigure the deflector dish, Chen strode to the turbolift. "You have the bridge," she told her first officer. "Ambassador Krell, with me?" The Rizian's antennae twitched in surprise, but he followed without comment. In the medical bay, chaos reigned. Dr. Venn and his team swarmed around Walker's prone form, shouting orders and readings. Chen pushed her way through, Krell close behind. "Doctor," she barked, "status?" Venn looked up, his face drawn. "It's his neural patterns, Admiral. They're destabilizing faster than we can correct them. The link with the worm, it's killing him." Chen's mind raced. "What about the neural transfer device, the one we used to separate them before?" Venn's eyes widened. "It's possible, but incredibly risky. We'd have to modify it on the fly, and even then, we could lose him entirely. Do it, Chen ordered, her voice leaving no room for argument. As Ven's team scrambled to prepare the device, Chen turned to Krell. The Rizian ambassador stood silent, his alien features unreadable. Ambassador, Chen began, but a shout from the bridge cut her off. Admiral! Her tactical officer's voice was tight with urgency. Long-range sensors are detecting a massive Rizian battle fleet approaching the system. Krell's antennae went rigid. Impossible, he breathed. I was not informed. Your fleet is unaware of our negotiations, Chen realized aloud. They're coming for the worm. Before Krell could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. On the main view screen, the Zeraxian worm's massive form began to pulse with an eerie, sickly light. Reeves, Chen shouted into her comm. Status on that deflector pulse. Almost there, Admiral, came the strained reply. But our shields are down to 20%. If that Rizian fleet opens fire... They won't, Chen said firmly, fixing Krell with the intense look. Will they, Ambassador? Krell hesitated, his eyes darting between Chen and the ailing worm on the screen. I cannot guarantee... A strangled cry from Walker cut through the tension. The captain's body arched off the medical bed, his eyes snapping open. They glowed with that otherworldly light, brighter than ever before. Now, Doctor, Chen ordered. Ven activated the modified neural transfer device. Energy crackled around Walker's head, and he screamed, a sound that was equal parts human and something else entirely. On the console, the worm's bioluminescence flared in response. Its massive form writhed, sending shockwaves through space that buffeted the Defiant. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Walker and the worm pulsed in unison. Then, with a final, blinding flash, both went still. Silence fell over the medical bay. Ven's fingers flew over his instruments, his face a mask of concentration. He's stabilizing, he reported, disbelief coloring his voice. Neural patterns are returning to normal. Well, normal for him. Chen allowed herself a moment of relief before turning back to the matter at hand. Ambassador Krell, she said, her voice low and intense, your fleet is moments away from firing on my ships and potentially restarting a war. I need you to contact them, now. Krell's antennae quivered with indecision. Admiral, Your Excellency. The weak voice startled them both. Walker had pushed himself up on one elbow, his eyes clear and very human. Please, we've come too far to let it end like this. The Rizian ambassador stared at Walker, then at the slowly recovering worm on the monitor. Finally, he nodded. I will speak with them, he said softly. As Krell moved to the communications panel, Chen turned back to Walker. How are you feeling, Captain? Walker managed a wan smile. Like I've been through a supernova, Admiral, but I'm me. Just me. Chen nodded, relief and regret warring within her. And the worm? Walker's eyes unfocused slightly. It's there. I can still feel it, but distantly, like an echo. Before Chen could respond, Krell's voice rang out. Admiral, my fleet! They're not responding. To Hales. Chen's head snapped up. On the screen, the first of the Rizian warships were dropping out of warp, weapons hot and aimed directly at the Defiant and the slowly recovering Zeraxian worm. Battle stations, Chen ordered, her voice calm despite the storm raging in her mind. All hands, prepare for imminent contact. As klaxons blared throughout the ship, Chen looked down at Walker. The captain's face was set with drive, despite his obvious exhaustion. One more crisis, Isaac, she said softly. Think you're up for it? Walker swung his legs over the side of the bed, grimacing as he stood. Always, Admiral, he replied, straightening his uniform. Let's go defend the galaxy. Again. Together they made their way to the bridge, where the massive Rizian fleet loomed on the interface. The next few moments would determine the fate of not just the Defiant and her crew, but of the entire fragile peace they had fought so hard to achieve. The bridge of the Defiant hummed with tension as the Rizian battle fleet loomed ever closer on the interface. Captain Walker, still unsteady on his feet, took his place beside Admiral Chen. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with willpower. "Open a channel," Chen ordered, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of Admiral Zarkon, the Rizian fleet commander. His antennae twitched with scarcely controlled hostility. "This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Fleet," Chen began, her tone diplomatic but firm. "We request an immediate ceasefire. There have been significant developments." "Spare me your excuses, human," Zarkon interrupted. "We are here to secure the Zaraxian worm. Stand down and prepare to be boarded." Chen's teeth clenched. "Admiral, I assure you, the situation has changed. We've been in negotiations with Ambassador Krell." "Krell is not here," Zarkon snapped, "and I have my orders. Now show me the worm's status, or we will open fire." The bridge fell silent. Chen glanced at Walker, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Very well," Chen said, gesturing to her tactical officer. The view screen split, showing the massive form of the Zaraxian worm alongside Zarkon's face. The Rizian admiral's eyes widened as he took in the worm's weakened state. Its bioluminescent patterns pulsed erratically, its movements sluggish. "What have you done to it?" Zarkon demanded. Before Chen could respond, Walker stepped forward. "Admiral Zarkon," he said, his voice hoarse but clear. "I'm Captain Isaac Walker. I have a unique connection to the worm, and I believe I can help you understand its true nature." Zarkon's antennae twitched with interest. "Explain." Walker took a deep breath. "I propose allowing a small delegation from your fleet to board the Defiant. Once here, we can use a modified neural transfer device to create a temporary link between you and the worm. You'll be able to experience its intentions firsthand." Silence fell over both bridges as Zarkon considered the offer. Finally he spoke. "And why should I trust you?" "Because," Walker said, leaning heavily on a nearby console, "this may be our only chance to avoid renewed conflict. The worm isn't a weapon, Admiral. It's so much more than that." After a long moment, Zarkon nodded. "Very well. Prepare for our arrival." The view screen went dark. Chen turned to Walker, concern etched on her face. "Are you sure about this, Isaac?" Walker managed a weak smile. "No, but it's our best shot." As the crew scrambled to prepare for the Rizian delegation, Chief Engineer Reeves's voice came over the comm. "Admiral, we've modified the neural transfer device as requested. But I must stress, this is highly experimental." "Understood, Chief," Chen replied. "Stand by." In the medical bay, Dr. Venn fretted over the equipment. "This is madness," he muttered. "The captain's neural patterns have barely stabilized, and now we're going to link him to an alien mind?" "We don't have a choice, Doctor," Walker said as he entered, supported by Chen. "Just make sure you can pull us out if things go sideways." The deck plates vibrated as a Rizian shuttle docked with the Defiant. Minutes later, Admiral Zarkon strode into the medical bay, flanked by two senior officers and a wary Lieutenant Commander Harper. Zarkon's eyes narrowed as he took in the scene. "Explain this procedure to me," he demanded. Dr. Venn stepped forward, outlining the process and potential risks. As he spoke, Walker settled into one of the neural link chairs, electrodes already attached to his temples. "You understand," Venn concluded, "that this is an unprecedented procedure. We cannot guarantee—" "I understand the risks," Zarkon interrupted. He turned to Chen. "If this is some form of trickery—" "It isn't," Chen assured him. "We're putting a lot of trust in you as well, Admiral." After a moment's hesitation, Zarkon nodded and took his place in the second chair. Dr. Venn attached the electrodes, his hands steady despite his obvious nervousness. "Ready?" Walker asked, looking at Zarkon. The Rizian Admiral's antennae twitched once. "Proceed." Dr. Venn activated the device. Walker and Zarkon's bodies went rigid, their eyes rolling back. On a nearby screen, the worm's bioluminescent patterns surged in response. Seconds stretched into minutes. Chen paced the length of the medical bay, her eyes darting between the motionless figures and the monitoring equipment. Suddenly, both Walker and Zarkon gasped, their eyes flying open. Dr. Venn rushed to disconnect the electrodes, scanning them for any sign of neural damage. Zarkon sat up slowly, his antennae quivering. His eyes, when they focused on Chen, were filled with a mix of awe and understanding. "Admiral Chen," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I had no idea. The worm, it's not a weapon," Walker finished, his voice weak but triumphant. Zarkon nodded. "We must speak immediately. There is much to discuss." As Chen led Zarkon to a nearby conference room, Walker attempted to stand. His legs buckled, and Dr. Ven barely caught him before he hit the floor. "Medical emergency!" Ven shouted, lowering Walker onto a biobed. "The captain's neural patterns are destabilizing again. Get me a cortical stimulator now." On the bridge, the tactical officer's voice rang out. "Sir, the worm, it's moving." The view screen showed the massive creature positioning itself between the human and Rizian fleets, its bioluminescent patterns pulsing with renewed vigor. As the crew of the Defiant watched in awe, the immediate threat of conflict began to fade. But new challenges loomed on the horizon. The human colonies would demand answers. The Rizian Empire faced internal turmoil, and Captain Walker, the linchpin of this fragile peace, fought for his life in the medical bay. Admiral Chen took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. They had averted war, but the real work was just beginning. As she prepared to join Zarkon for their impromptu peace conference, she couldn't help but wonder what new trials awaited them in this brave new era of interstellar relations. Cooperation. As she prepared to join Zarkon for their impromptu peace conference, she couldn't help but wonder what new trials awaited them in this brave new era of interstellar diplomacy. The answer came sooner than expected. As Chen entered the conference room, Dr. Ven's urgent voice crackled over the comm system. "Admiral, we have a situation. Captain Walker's condition is deteriorating rapidly." Chen's heart sank. She turned to Zarkon, who nodded in understanding. "Go," he said. "We can continue our discussions later." Rushing to the medical bay, Chen found Walker thrashing on the biobed, his face contorted in pain. Dr. Ven worked frantically, adjusting neural stabilizers and monitoring vital signs. "What's happening?" Chen demanded. Ven shook his head, frustration evident in his voice. "His neural patterns are becoming increasingly erratic. It's as if his brain is struggling to process the vast amount of information gained from the multiple connections with the Zaraxian worm." Chen watched as Walker's body arched off the bed, his eyes rolling back. "Options, Doctor?" Ven hesitated, then spoke quickly. "There is one possibility, but it's risky. We could use a modified version of the neural transfer device to create a temporary stable neural pattern for the captain. It would allow him to function normally during the peace talks, but what? There's a significant risk of long-term damage to his brain," Ven finished quietly. Chen closed her eyes, weighing the options. Walker's expertise was crucial for the upcoming conference, but at what cost? Before she could respond, the ship's tactical officer's voice rang out over the comm. "Admiral, we're receiving multiple distress calls from human colonies. They're declaring their intention to secede from Earth government." Chen's head snapped up. "What?" "Several colonies, led by Governor Marcus Blackwood of New Eden, are mobilizing their defense forces. They're threatening to ally with fringe elements of the Rizian Empire who oppose the peace process." The situation was spiraling out of control. Chen turned back to Dr. Ven. "Do it," she ordered. "Stabilize Captain Walker. We need him functional." As Ven began preparations for the procedure, Chen strode to the bridge. The main view screen displayed a map of human-controlled space, with several systems flashing red to indicate the separatist movement. "Set course for New Eden," Chen commanded. "Maximum warp." The helmsman looked up, confusion evident on his face. "But Admiral, the peace conference—" "We'll have to wait," Chen finished grimly. "If we don't contain this situation, there won't be a unified human government left to negotiate with." As the Defiant's enhanced engines, reverse-engineered from Rizian technology, propelled them towards New Eden, Chen received regular updates from the medical bay. Walker's procedure was underway, a brutal process that left the captain convulsing in agony as the modified neural transfer device attempted to reorganize his chaotic neural patterns. Hours into their journey, long-range scanners detected a Rizian battlecruiser in orbit around New Eden. The bridge crew tensed, hands hovering over their stations. "Battle stations," Chen ordered, her voice calm despite the storm of emotions raging within her. "Prepare for potential hostile engagement." As they entered New Eden's orbit, a transmission came through. Governor Marcus Blackwood's face filled the view screen, his expression a mix of defiance and barely concealed fear. "Admiral Chen," he began, his voice steady, "I demand that you recognize the independence of our colonies and grant us unrestricted access to the Zoraxian worm. We will no longer be denied the benefits of this revolutionary discovery." Chen's mind raced, trying to formulate a response that would buy time without escalating the situation further. Before she could speak, however, the ship's sensors blared a warning. "Admiral," the tactical officer shouted, "the Zoraxian worm! It's accelerating towards us!" All eyes turned to the view screen as the massive form of the worm appeared, dwarfing both the Defiant and the Rizian battlecruiser. Its bioluminescent patterns pulsed in a complex, mesmerizing sequence that seemed to captivate everyone who saw it. Suddenly, the turbolift doors hissed open, revealing Captain Walker. He stumbled onto the bridge, his face pale and drawn, but his eyes clear and focused. "Captain," Chen began, moving to support him. "You shouldn't be—" Walker waved her off, his gaze fixed on the worm. "I can sense it, Admiral," he said, his voice hoarse but urgent. "The worm is trying to communicate directly with the colonists. Its bioluminescent display, it's a language." Chen's eyes widened as she realized the implications. "Can you interpret it?" Walker nodded weakly. "With the ship's communication array, I think we can amplify and translate the worm's message to the planet's population." It was a gamble, but faced with limited options, Chen made her decision. "Do it," she ordered. As the crew worked to integrate Walker's unique understanding of the worm with the Defiant's advanced communication systems, Chen watched the view screen with anxious anticipation. Slowly, the bioluminescent patterns began to persistence into recognizable images, cosmic wonders, potential futures, all narrated by a haunting harmony of human and alien voices. The effect on New Eden was immediate and profound. Governor Blackwood's face reappeared on the screen, his earlier bravado replaced by awe and uncertainty. Reports flooded in from the planet's surface, describing crowds gathering to watch the celestial display, their separatist fervor cooling in the face of this cosmic revelation. Even the Rizian battlecruiser seemed affected, powering down its weapon systems and retreating to a safe distance. As the situation on New Eden stabilized, Chen allowed herself a moment of relief, but it was short-lived. Behind her, she heard a strangled gasp, followed by the thud of a body hitting the deck. "Captain!" Dr. Ven's voice rang out as he rushed onto the bridge, medical tricorder already in hand. Chen turned to see Walker collapsed on the floor, his eyes rolled back and his body twitching uncontrollably. The strain of interpreting and broadcasting the worm's message, Ven explained hurriedly as he scanned Walker. It's overwhelmed his neural patterns. He's slipping into a coma. Chen felt the weight of command settle heavily on her shoulders. The crisis on New Eden might be persistent, but Captain Walker's life hung in the balance. And beyond that, the peace conference still loomed, its outcome now more uncertain than ever. As the Defiant prepared to resume its journey to the neutral conference location, Chen gave her next order with a heavy heart. Dr. Ven, explore all options for reviving the captain, no matter how experimental or dangerous. We need him. The ship broke orbit, leaving behind a changed New Eden and carrying with it the unconscious form of Captain Isaac Walker, a man whose fate had become inextricably linked with the future of human-alien relations. As they warped towards their destination, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that the true challenges of this new era were only just beginning. The Defiant streaked through space, its enhanced engines humming with awe-inspiring power. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the console as they approached the neutral conference location. Behind her, the turbo-lift doors hissed open, and Dr. Ven stepped onto the bridge, his face a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Admiral," he said, his voice low but urgent, "I believe I've made a breakthrough in treating Captain Walker's condition." Chen turned, her eyebrow raised. "Go on, Doctor." Ven launched into an explanation of his proposed treatment, detailing how he'd synthesized a compound from the Zoraxian worm's neural tissue. As he spoke, Chen's eyes widened, recognizing both the potential and the risk of such an experimental procedure. "You're sure about this?" she asked, her voice steady despite the weight of the decision before her. Ven nodded. "As sure as I can be, given the circumstances. It's our best chance to stabilize his neural patterns." Chen closed her eyes for a moment, weighing the options. Walker's expertise was crucial for the upcoming negotiations, but the risk to his life was significant. Finally, she opened her eyes and gave a sharp nod. "Do it, but I want constant updates on his condition." As Ven hurried back to the medical bay, Chen turned to her communications officer. "Inform the conference organizers that we may be slightly delayed, and get me Admiral Zarkon. I want to brief him on the situation." In the medical bay, a flurry of activity surrounded the unconscious form of Captain Walker. Dr. Ven and his team worked with practiced efficiency, preparing the specialized chamber and checking the biomonitoring systems. The air was thick with tension as they carefully placed Walker inside. "Initiating neural interface," Ven announced, his fingers flying over the control panel. "Administering the compound. Now." The effect was almost immediate. Walker's body jerked, his face contorting in pain. On the monitors, his vital signs spiked erratically. Ven leaned in, his eyes darting between the readouts and Walker's twitching form. Suddenly, an alarm blared on the bridge. "Admiral!" the tactical officer shouted. "The worm! It's accelerating!" Chen whirled to face the view screen. The massive form of the Zaraxian worm surged forward, quickly overtaking the Defiant and positioning itself alongside the ship. Its body pulsed with intense bioluminescence, creating a hypnotic display that drew the attention of every crew member on the bridge. "Chief Engineer Reeves to the bridge," Chen ordered, her voice taut with tension. Moments later, Reeves burst onto the bridge, his face flushed from his run. "Admiral, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the worm. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." As Chen digested this information, her comm badge chirped. "Ven to Admiral Chen, you need to see this." Chen strode into the medical bay, her eyes immediately drawn to the neural activity display above Walker's chamber. The patterns were shifting, reorganizing themselves in ways that seemed to defy human physiology. "It's incredible," Ven breathed. "His brain patterns, they're synchronizing with the energy pulses from the worm." Chen's mind raced, trying to process the implications of this development. Before she could respond, Walker's eyes snapped open. He gasped, his body arching off the bed. "Captain," Ven exclaimed, rushing to his side. "Can you hear me?" Walker's eyes darted around the room, unfocused at first, then sharpening with an intensity that made Chen take a step back. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse but clear. "I can hear them, Admiral. The worm. It's trying to tell us something." As Chen opened her mouth to respond, the ship's comm system crackled to life. "Bridge to Admiral Chen. We're entering orbit around the conference planet." Chen looked down at Walker, then back at Ven. "Is he stable enough to participate in the negotiations?" Ven hesitated, running another quick scan. "Physically, yes, but his neural structure has been significantly altered. I can't predict how this will affect his behavior or decision-making." Walker pushed himself up, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. "I need to be there, Admiral. What I've learned, it's crucial to the negotiations." Chen studied him for a long moment, noting the strange new clarity in his eyes. Finally, she nodded. "All right, Captain, but you'll be monitored closely. Any sign of instability, and you're out. Understood?" Walker nodded, standing on slightly shaky legs. "Understood, Admiral. Let's make history." As they made their way to the transporter room, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into uncharted territory. The sight of the assembled fleet in orbit around the conference planet only reinforced this sensation. Ships of all shapes and sizes, representing human colonies and Rizian factions alike, filled the view screen. "Quite a turnout," Walker murmured, his eyes fixed on the display. Chen nodded, her fists tight. "Let's hope we can turn this crowd into a coalition." As they prepared to beam down to the surface, Chen's comm badge chirped one final time. "Admiral," came the voice of her communications officer. "Urgent message from Earth Central. They're reporting growing unrest among certain factions. There are concerns about potential restrictions on human expansion and technological development." Chen sighed, sharing a look with Walker. Acknowledged. We'll deal with that when we return. For now, our focus is on the negotiations. As they stepped onto the transporter pad, Chen couldn't help but wonder what other surprises awaited them on the planet's surface. With Captain Walker's mind transformed, the Xeraxian worm hovering enigmatically in space, and tensions running high among the assembled delegates, the stage was set for a conference that would shape the future of multiple species. The transporter beam engulfed them, whisking them away to face the challenges that lay ahead. As they rematerialized on the planet's surface, Chen took a deep breath, steeling herself for what promised to be the most critical diplomatic engagement of her career. As the shimmering effect of the transporter beam faded, Chen and Walker found themselves in a grand atrium, surrounded by delegates from various species. The air buzzed with anticipation and tension. Before Chen could take in her surroundings fully, her communicator chirped urgently. "Admiral, this is Dr. Ven. Captain Walker's neural structure is showing unexpected changes. I strongly recommend—" A sudden commotion cut off Ven's words. Shouts erupted from the far end of the atrium, followed by the distinctive whine of energy weapons. Chen's hand flew to her phaser, but Walker's arm shot out, stopping her. "Wait," he said, his voice unnaturally calm. His eyes, now bearing a faint, otherworldly glow, scanned the room with inhuman precision. "There's more to this than we can see." Before Chen could question him, a group of armed individuals burst into the atrium. Their leader, a tall man with a scarred face and steely eyes, stepped forward. "I am Colonel Jeremiah Stark," he announced, his voice carrying across the now silent room. "This conference is over. All alien delegates will leave immediately. The Xeraxian worm belongs to humanity alone." Chaos erupted as delegates scrambled for cover. Chen's mind raced, assessing options and potential outcomes. She tapped her communicator. "Chen to Defiant. We have a hostage situation. Initiate security protocol Omega-3. Walker stepped forward, his movements fluid and purposeful. "Colonel Stark," he called out, drawing the attention of the separatists. "You don't understand the true nature of what you're dealing with. The worm isn't a tool to be used. It's a sentient being with knowledge beyond our comprehension." Stark's eyes narrowed. "And who are you to lecture me on comprehension, Captain? You're just another puppet of the alien-loving Federation." As Stark spoke, Chen noticed Walker's eyes darting around the room, as if tracking invisible movements. She remembered Ven's warning about the captain's altered neural structure and felt a chill run down her spine. "Admiral," Walker whispered, not taking his eyes off Stark, "I can sense the worm's presence. It's extending its awareness into this facility. If I can establish a deeper connection, I might be able to map out the entire building and locate all the separatists." Chen hesitated, weighing the potential benefits against the unknown risks. "Do it," she finally said, "but be careful, Captain. We don't know the full extent of your condition." As Walker closed his eyes, concentrating on his link with the Xeraxian worm, Chen's communicator chirped again. "Admiral," came the voice of Lieutenant Commander Jack Harper, "we've deployed a joint human-Rizian special ops team. Major Hawkins and Commander Zoltar are leading the infiltration." "Understood," Chen replied quietly. "Stand by for further instructions." Walker's eyes snapped open, now glowing even more intensely. "I can see them," he said, his voice distant and otherworldly. "The separatists, the hostages, even the facility systems. It's all connected through the worm's sensory network." Chen relayed this information to Harper, who passed it on to the special ops team. As Walker continued to feed them real-time intelligence, the team moved swiftly through the facility, avoiding separatist patrols and disarming hidden explosives. In the atrium, Stark grew increasingly agitated as his plans began to unravel. "What's happening?" he demanded, pointing his weapon at a trembling Rizian delegate. "How are they finding our people so quickly?" Walker stepped forward again, his movements almost hypnotic. "Colonel, you need to stand down. This path leads only to destruction, for you and for humanity." As Walker spoke, Chen noticed a trickle of blood running from his nose. She tapped her communicator. "Ven, what's Walker's status?" "Critical, Admiral," came the doctor's urgent reply. His neural patterns are destabilizing rapidly. If we don't sever the connection soon, we may lose him entirely. Before Chen could respond, Stark let out a primal yell of frustration. Enough! If I can't have the worm, no one will. He raised a detonator, his thumb hovering over the trigger. In that moment, several things happened at once. The special ops team burst into the atrium, weapons trained on the separatists. Walker collapsed to his knees, blood now flowing freely from his nose and ears. And Chen, acting on pure instinct, launched herself at Stark. As Chen grappled with the colonel, trying to wrest the detonator from his grasp, she heard Walker's voice, weak but clear. The worm, it's trying to communicate. We've all misunderstood its purpose. It's not a weapon or a tool. It's a bridge. With a final surge of strength, Chen knocked the detonator from Stark's hand. Major Hawkins moved in swiftly, subduing the colonel as Commander Zoltar secured the other separatists. Chen rushed to Walker's side, cradling his head as his eyes fluttered, the otherworldly glow fading. "Stay with us, Captain," she urged. "That's an order." As medical teams swarmed into the atrium and delegates emerged from hiding, Chen felt the weight of the moment. The crisis was over, but its repercussions were just beginning to unfold. Walker's revelation about the worm's true nature hung in the air, promising to reshape the very foundation of human-alien relations. Looking down at the captain's pale face, Chen knew that the greatest challenges, and perhaps the greatest opportunities, still lay ahead. The peace conference would proceed, but with a new understanding that none of them could have anticipated. As she waited for Walker to be transported to the medical bay, Chen steeled herself for the difficult conversations and decisions that would shape the future of multiple species in the wake of this extraordinary event. As Chen waited for Walker to be transported to the medical bay, alarms blared throughout the facility. The Admiral's communicator crackled to life, Lieutenant Commander Harper's voice cutting through the chaos. "Admiral, we have a situation. A team led by Major Hawkins and Commander Zoltar has breached the Central Command Center, but Colonel Stark has activated some kind of energy shield. They can't get to him." Chen's eyes hardened. "Understood. Keep me updated on their progress." She turned to the medical team, attending to Walker. "Get him to the Defiant immediately. Dr. Venn needs to stabilize his condition." As the captain dematerialized in a shimmer of blue light, Chen's mind raced through potential scenarios. The Separatists were cornered, but Stark's stolen technology made him a dangerous wildcard. Aboard the Defiant, Dr. Venn worked feverishly to sever Walker's neural link with the Zeraxian worm. The captain's body convulsed on the biobed. His eyes rolled back in their sockets. "Initiating emergency disconnect procedure," Venn announced, pressing a hypo spray to Walker's neck. The captain's body went rigid, then fell still. Back in the facility, Major Hawkins assessed the situation. Stark stood behind his shimmering energy shield, a manic grin on his face as he tapped away at a control panel. "Sir, he's accessing the building's systems," one of her team members reported. "He's initiated a lockdown protocol." Hawkins cursed under her breath as blast doors slammed shut throughout the facility. "Zoltar, can your people bypass the lockdown?" The Risian commander shook his head, mandibles clicking in frustration. "Not quickly. Stark's using a hybrid system, part human, part Risian. It will take time to crack." Outside the command center, panic spread among the trapped delegates. Accusations flew as representatives from various species found themselves sealed in rooms together, old grudges and suspicions bubbling to the surface. Admiral Chen's voice came through the facility's comm system, steady and authoritative. "This is Admiral Chen. I understand many of you are trapped and frightened. I assure you, we are doing everything in our power to dedication this situation. Please remain calm and cooperate with one another. Remember why we're here, to build a lasting peace between our peoples." Her words had some effect, but tension remained high. Chen turned to her security chief. "Deploy additional forces to the surface and prep the hybrid shuttles for emergency evacuation." As the crisis on the ground escalated, the situation in orbit took an alarming turn. The Zeraxian worm, previously holding position near the Defiant, began to move. "Admiral," the tactical officer reported, "the worm is descending towards the planet's atmosphere." Chen's blood ran cold. She opened a channel to the medical bay. "Ven, what's Walker's status?" "Critical but stable," the doctor replied. "I've severed the neural link, but his mind is struggling to process the information overload." Chen weighed her options, each fraught with risk. Allow the link to persist in hopes of controlling the worm, or protect Walker's human consciousness at the potential cost of an uncontrolled descent. Before she could decide, Major Hawkins's voice came through. "Admiral, we have a plan to neutralize Stark's shield. Permission to proceed?" "Granted, Major. Do what you need to do." In the command center, Hawkins nodded to her team. "Initiate fire suppression systems. Full coverage." A thick, translucent gel began to spray from nozzles in the ceiling, coating everything in the room. Stark laughed, protected by his shield, until the barrier began to flicker and distort. "Now!" Hawkins shouted. Commander Zoltar and his strike team moved with lightning speed, tackling Stark just as his shield failed completely. As they subdued the colonel, Harper's voice came through Chen's communicator. "Admiral, we've detected an outgoing transmission attempt. Classified data on human and Rizian military capabilities." "Block it, Harper. Use whatever means necessary." Chen's attention snapped back to the view screen as the worm entered the planet's upper atmosphere, its massive body heating up and creating a spectacular light show visible from the surface. "Dr. Ven," she called, "we need options. Now." The doctor's reply was immediate. "Admiral, I propose a temporary three-way link between Walker, the worm, and our computer systems. It's risky, but it might allow us to communicate with the creature and guide its actions." Chen closed her eyes, knowing the weight of her next words. "Do it." In the medical bay, Ven and his team worked at breakneck speed, modifying the neural transfer device to interface with the Defiant's computer core. They connected Walker to the system, and the captain's body arched off the bed, his eyes snapping open and glowing with an otherworldly light. Through this unprecedented connection, Walker's consciousness expanded, touching the vast alien mind of the worm. Images and sensations flooded his awareness. The creature's descent was not an attack, but a response to the threat it perceived to the peace conference. With monumental effort, Walker guided the worm, steadying its descent. The creature's enormous body spread out over the conference facility, creating a living, bioluminescent canopy that mesmerized all who saw it. As the immediate crises abated, Stark in custody, delegates being evacuated, the worm stabilized, Chen allowed herself a moment of cautious relief. But she knew the challenges ahead were just beginning to take shape. The worm's protective action had fundamentally altered the dynamics of the peace conference. Concerns about human control over such a powerful entity would need to be addressed, and Walker's condition remained precarious, his mind linked in ways never before attempted. As Chen prepared to return to the surface and face the assembled delegates, she steeled herself for the complex negotiations ahead. The fate of interstellar relations hung in the balance, with the true potential of human-alien symbiosis yet to be fully understood or realized. Chen took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenges ahead. The Xeraxian worm's massive form stretched above the conference facility, its bioluminescent glow casting an otherworldly light over the assembled delegates. As she stepped onto the conference floor, a hush fell over the crowd. Chen surveyed the room, noting the mix of awe and apprehension on the faces of humans and aliens alike. "Distinguished delegates," she began, her voice steady and clear, "recent events have demonstrated both the potential dangers and the extraordinary opportunities that lie before us. The actions of Colonel Stark and his separatists threaten to derail our efforts at peace. But through unprecedented cooperation, we have not only overcome this threat but witnessed a remarkable demonstration of interspecies symbiosis." Chen gestured towards the ceiling, where the worm's protective canopy pulsed with gentle light. "This being, which we once viewed solely as a potential weapon, has shown us a glimpse of what's possible when we work together." As Chen spoke, Dr. Ven's voice came through her earpiece. "Admiral, Walker's condition has stabilized, but there's something you need to see." Chen concluded her address, urging the delegates to reconvene with renewed purpose, then made her way to the medical bay. She found Walker conscious but distant, his eyes unfocused as if seeing something beyond the room. "What's happening to him, Doctor?" Chen asked, watching as Walker's lips moved silently. Ven's expression was a mix of concern and excitement. It appears the neural link has opened a floodgate of information. Walker is experiencing visions, memories perhaps, from the worm's vast history. His brain is adapting at an astonishing rate to process this influx of data. Before Chen could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. She rushed to the bridge, where a tactical officer reported, "Admiral, long-range scans have detected an anomaly approaching the Rizian system. It's a comet, massive in scale, on a direct collision course with their homeworld." Chen's mind raced, considering the implications. The peace conference had just narrowly avoided disaster, and now they faced a threat that could obliterate an entire civilization. She opened a channel to the conference facility. "This is Admiral Chen. I need the Rizian delegation and our top scientists to report to the Defiant immediately. We have a situation that requires our immediate attention." Within the hour, the ship's main briefing room was filled with a mix of human and Rizian officials. Ambassador Krell, the leader of the Rizian delegation, stood at the front of the room, his normally stoic features betraying a hint of fear. "Our long-range scans confirm it," Krell said, his voice grave. "The comet's trajectory will bring it into direct impact with our homeworld. The devastation would be unimaginable." A murmur of concern rippled through the room. Chen noticed Counselor Marcus Thorne, a recent addition to the Human Diplomatic Corps, leaning forward with interest. Krell continued, "We propose a joint operation using our gravity manipulation technology in conjunction with human fusion drives to divert the comet's path." Thorne cleared his throat, his expression skeptical. "While we sympathize with your plight, Ambassador, sharing such advanced human technology presents significant security concerns. We must consider the long-term implications of—" A commotion at the door interrupted Thorne's objection. Captain Walker stumbled into the room, supported by Dr. Venn. His eyes glowed with an eerie light, and when he spoke, his voice seemed to echo with an otherworldly resonance. "There's another way," Walker said, his gaze unfocused. "The worm, it can help us. It knows things. Ancient knowledge, lost technologies. We can use folded space to intercept the comet long before it reaches the Rizian system." The room erupted in a cacophony of voices, some expressing doubt, others excitement at the possibilities. Chen raised her hand for silence. "Captain, are you certain about this?" she asked, studying Walker's face carefully. He nodded, his expression clearing slightly. "The worm has traveled vast distances using methods we can barely comprehend. With its help, we can reach the comet in time to alter its course." Chen made a swift decision. "Dr. Reeves," she said, addressing the ship's lead astrophysicist, "I want you to work with the Rizian science team to develop a plan based on Captain Walker's proposal. We'll need to move quickly." As the meeting adjourned, Chen pulled Major Hawkins aside. "Sarah, I need you and Commander Zoltar to form a joint security team. We've received intelligence that Stark's followers are regrouping. They may attempt to sabotage our efforts." Hawkins nodded grimly. "Understood, Admiral. We'll be ready for them." As the Defiant hummed with activity, preparations for the unprecedented mission underway, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into uncharted territory. The fate of billions hung in the balance, and the fragile alliance between humans and Rizians would be tested like never before. In the medical bay, Dr. Venn made a startling discovery. The neural link between Walker, the worm, and the ship's systems had begun to alter the Defiant itself. Strange, organic growths appeared in various sections, integrating with the mechanical systems in ways that defied conventional understanding. As Chen stared at the strange hybrid of technology and biology forming before her eyes, she realized that the true implications of their symbiosis with the Xeraxian worm were only beginning to unfold. The mission to save the Rizian homeworld would be just the first step in a journey that would redefine the very nature of human existence in the cosmos. Universe. The organic growth spreading through the Defiant were just the beginning of a transformation that would reshape their understanding of technology and biology. Admiral Chen turned her attention to the urgent matter at hand. The conference room buzzed with tense energy as human and Rizian delegates debated Captain Walker's proposed plan. Counselor Marcus Thorne's voice cut through the din. "While I appreciate the captain's unique insight, we cannot ignore the potential risks of relying so heavily on an alien entity we barely understand. Ambassador Krell's multifaceted eyes narrowed. And what would you suggest, Counselor? That we stand idly by as our homeworld faces annihilation? Chen raised a hand, silencing the room. We don't have the luxury of prolonged debate. Dr. Reeves, what's the status of our preparations? The astrophysicist straightened. Admiral, we've begun establishing relay stations throughout the sector. These will allow us to maintain communication with the Worm and Captain Walker during their journey through folded space. And the Rizian input? Chen prompted. Science Director Zolvan stepped forward, his iridescent scales shimmering under the harsh lights. Our subspace harmonic technology has been successfully integrated with the human quantum entanglement systems. It's a significant breakthrough in interspecies collaboration. As the briefing continued, alarms blared throughout the ship. Major Hawkins's voice crackled over the comm system. Admiral, we have multiple reports of separatist attacks across human and Rizian space. Chen's face hardened. Hawkins, Zoltar, deploy your teams immediately. Neutralize those threats. The room erupted into chaos as delegates demanded updates on their respective territories. Chen cut through the noise, issuing rapid-fire orders to coordinate the defense efforts. Hours passed in a blur of tactical updates and damage reports. The Separatists had struck with precision, disrupting supply lines and damaging several of the newly established relay stations. The attacks threatened to derail their plans, pushing them dangerously close to missing their window to intercept the comet. In engineering, Chief Marcus Reeves stared in awe at the ship's internal schematics. Admiral, he reported, the organic integration is accelerating. These hybrid systems, they're pushing our capabilities beyond anything we've seen before. Chen studied the readouts, noting the concern etched on the faces of her crew. The Defiant was changing before their eyes, its hull taking on an almost lifelike quality. As the deadline loomed, Chen knew she faced a pivotal decision. The Separatist threat remained active, their own preparations were behind schedule, and the very nature of their ship was in flux. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what came next. Attention all hands, Chen's voice rang out across the ship. We are initiating a full integration with the Zeraxian worm's biological systems. Prepare for transformation protocols. The ship shuddered as the integration process began in earnest. The hull rippled and shifted, new appendages sprouting from unexpected places. Sensory organs unlike anything in human or Rizian design emerged, granting the Defiant capabilities that defied conventional understanding. In the medical bay, Captain Walker arched off the bed, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Dr. Venn monitored his vital signs with growing amazement. His neural patterns are evolving, Venn reported. It's as if his consciousness is expanding to encompass not just the worm's knowledge, but the collective experiences of the entire crew. As the transformation neared completion, long-range sensors blared a new warning. Chen rushed to the bridge, her eyes widening at the tactical display. Admiral, the sensor officer reported, we're detecting a massive Rizian fleet on approach. Their weapons are hot and they're not responding to hails. Chen's mind raced. This hardline faction of the Rizian military threatened to undo everything they had worked for. With the clock ticking on the comet's approach and Separatists still active in the sector, they couldn't afford this new complication. Deploy our combined defense fleet, Chen ordered. The Defiant will take point. As the newly transformed ship moved into position, its organic-mechanical hybrid formed a stark contrast to the conventional vessels around it. Chen felt the weight of multiple worlds resting on her shoulders. The approaching Rizian fleet loomed large on the monitor, a testament to the fragility of their hard-won peace. Captain Walker's voice, now carrying an echo of something vast and ancient, came over the comm system. Admiral, I'm ready to navigate. Chen nodded, her eyes fixed on the enemy fleet. Understood, Captain. All hands, prepare for engagement. The fate of our worlds hangs in the balance. The Defiant surged forward, its new appendages shifting in anticipation of the coming conflict. As the distance closed between the two fleets, Chen knew that the next few moments would determine not just the outcome of their mission, but the future of interspecies cooperation in the face of cosmic threats. threats. As the Defiant surged forward, its newly formed appendages shifting in anticipation, Admiral Chen's mind raced through potential strategies. The approaching Rizian fleet loomed ever larger on the tactical display, their weapons primed and ready. Chen's eyes narrowed as she considered their options. Suddenly, an idea struck her. "Lieutenant Park, status on the experimental cloaking technology?" The young officer's fingers flew across his console. "The combined human-Rizian cloaking system is operational, Admiral, but it hasn't been field-tested." Chen nodded, her decision made. "Initiate cloaking sequence. Let's put it to the test." The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, activating the revolutionary system. A shimmering field enveloped the Defiant, its hybrid hull seeming to ripple and fade from view. On the tactical display, the ship's signature became a ghostly echo, barely distinguishable from the background radiation of space. "Cloaking successful, Admiral," Park reported, a note of awe in his voice. "We're nearly invisible to standard sensors." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Excellent. Helm, bring us about. We're going to flank their command ship." The Defiant's organic-mechanical hybrid form glided through space with unprecedented grace, effortlessly slipping past the Rizian fleet's picket line. As they approached the enemy flagship, Chen opened a secure channel to Captain Walker in the medical bay. "Captain, we need your expanded perception. Guide our strike." Walker's voice came through, tinged with an otherworldly resonance. "Understood, Admiral. I see it all. Every ship, every weapon, every potential outcome." Under Walker's guidance, the Defiant maneuvered into the perfect attack position. Chen gave the order, and the ship's newly integrated weaponry sprang to life. Tendrils of bioenergy intertwined with streams of superheated plasma, lancing out to strike the Rizian flagship with surgical precision. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The enemy vessel's engines sputtered and died, leaving it drifting helplessly in space. Chaos erupted among the Rizian fleet as their command structure crumbled. Chen wasted no time. "Open a channel to all Rizian vessels." The communications officer nodded, and Chen addressed the enemy fleet. "This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Alliance. We have disabled your flagship without loss of life. Stand down immediately." She paused, letting the gravity of the situation sink in before continuing. "We are not your enemy. There is a greater threat approaching, a comet on a collision course with your homeworld. We came here to save billions of Rizian lives, not to fight a pointless battle." Chen nodded to her communications officer, who transmitted a data package containing evidence of the impending disaster. The bridge fell silent as they waited for a response. Minutes ticked by, feeling like hours. Then one by one, Rizian ships began powering down their weapons. Some remained defiant, but it was clear the hardliner fleet had lost its cohesion. A transmission came through from one of the Rizian captains. "This is Commander Zolvin of the Rizian Defense Force. We had no idea. How can we assist in averting this catastrophe?" Chen exhaled slowly, the tension draining from her shoulders. "Thank you, Commander. Have your ships form up alongside ours. We'll brief you on the mission details shortly." As the immediate crisis subsided, the Defiant's crew turned their attention to final preparations for their journey through folded space. In engineering, Chief Marcus Reeves monitored the ongoing integration of the ship's systems. "Admiral," he reported, his voice filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, "you need to see this." Chen made her way to engineering, where she found Reeves standing before a holographic display of the Defiant. The ship's schematics were changing before their eyes, new structures sprouting and evolving in real time. "The hull," Reeves explained, pointing to a section of the display. "It's developing some kind of energy-absorbing scales, and these," he indicated several protrusions along the ship's spine, "appear to be entirely new sensory organs." Chen studied the display, her mind racing to comprehend the implications. How will this affect our mission parameters? Before Reeves could answer, an urgent message came through from the bridge. "Admiral, long-range sensors have detected an unidentified vessel entering the system. It's unlike anything we've ever seen." Chen rushed back to the bridge, where the tactical display showed a sleek, otherworldly ship approaching at incredible speeds. Its design was utterly alien, defying conventional understanding of spacecraft architecture. "It's on an intercept course with the comet," the sensor officer reported, his voice hushed with awe. The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity as the crew scrambled to analyze this new development. Chen opened a channel to the peace conference delegates, knowing that this unexpected arrival would complicate an already delicate situation. As the delegates argued over how to proceed, Captain Walker's voice cut through the din. "Admiral, I recognize elements of that ship's design. The Worm, it has encountered similar vessels before, eons ago." Chen leaned in, her interest piqued. "What can you tell us, Captain?" "They're ancient," Walker replied, his voice distant as if accessing long-buried memories. "Incredibly advanced, but their intentions, I can't be certain." Chen weighed her options, acutely aware of the ticking clock. The comet drew ever closer to the Ryzen homeworld, while an unknown alien force approached with uncertain motives. She knew her next decision could shape the future of multiple civilizations. Taking a deep breath, Chen addressed the assembled delegates and her crew. "We will proceed with our mission as planned. The Defiant will enter folded space to intercept the comet. Simultaneously, we'll dispatch a diplomatic vessel to make contact with the alien ship." She turned to her communications officer. "Contact Ambassador Soros and High Emissary Zolkar. They'll lead the first contact team." As the orders were relayed and preparations finalized, Chen felt the weight of history pressing down upon her. The Defiant, now a unique fusion of three distinct technologies, hummed with power as it prepared to venture into the unknown realms of folded space. Captain Walker's consciousness, expanded beyond human limits, guided the ship as it approached the threshold of this unexplored dimension. The organic components of the hull pulsed with energy, new sensory organs straining to perceive the fabric of space-time itself. Chen watched as the stars on the monitor began to distort, reality itself seeming to bend around the Defiant. With a final, silent prayer, she gave the order. "Take us in, Captain." The Defiant surged forward, slipping into the swirling chaos of folded space. As the familiar universe fell away behind them, Chen couldn't help but wonder what challenges awaited them in the vast, uncharted realm that now surrounded them. The familiar universe vanished, replaced by a swirling maelstrom of colors and distorted shapes that defied description. The Defiant trembled as it plunged deeper into the chaotic realm of folded space. Captain Walker's voice, layered with the ethereal tones of his expanded consciousness, echoed through the ship's communication system. "Admiral, I'm detecting anomalies in the space-time fabric. Our trajectory is becoming unstable." Chen gripped the arms of her command chair as the ship shuddered violently. "Status report." Lieutenant Park's fingers danced across his console. "Multiple distortions forming around us, Admiral. They're interfering with our navigation systems." "Chief Reeves," Chen called out, "we need options." In engineering, Reeves surveyed the rapidly changing schematics of the Defiant. The ship's hybrid nature was both a blessing and a curse in this uncharted territory. "Admiral, I'm initiating an emergency reconfiguration. We're going to use the organic components to our advantage." The hull of the Defiant began to ripple and shift, new structures sprouting from its surface. Sensory tendrils extended outward, probing the chaotic currents of folded space. The bridge crew watched in awe as their ship reshaped itself before their eyes. "The new sensory organs are coming online," Reeves reported. "They're allowing us to perceive the space-time distortions more clearly." Captain Walker's consciousness merged with the ship's enhanced awareness. "I can see the currents now, Admiral, adjusting our course to navigate through the turbulence." The Defiant's movements became more fluid, its new streamlined protrusions cutting through the fabric of folded space with increasing precision. Chen felt the ship's vibrations lessen as they adapted to this alien environment. Meanwhile, light years away, Ambassador Elena Soros stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel, her eyes wide with wonder. Before them loomed a massive, otherworldly construct that resembled nothing so much as a cosmic jellyfish. Its translucent body pulsed with internal lights, dwarfing their ship. "High Emissary," Soros called to her Rizian counterpart, "are you seeing this?" Zolkar nodded, his expression a mixture of awe and trepidation. Never in all my years did I imagine encountering such a being. The communications officer's voice interrupted their reverie. Ambassador, we're receiving a transmission from the alien vessel. The translation algorithms are processing it now. Soros took a deep breath, steeling herself for this historic moment. Open a channel. A series of melodic tones filled the bridge, slowly resolving into recognizable speech. Greetings, young ones. We are the Zth-Kree, wanderers of the cosmic seas. Soros stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. I am Ambassador Elena Soros of the United Earth Alliance, and this is High Emissary Zolkar of the Risian Confederation. We welcome you to our system. The conversation that followed was unlike any first contact scenario Soros had trained for. The Zth-Kree spoke in concepts as much as words, their vast history and unique perspective challenging the limits of the translation algorithms. We have observed the approaching harbinger of destruction, the Zth-Kree communicated, referring to the comet. Your efforts to preserve life are intriguing. Zolkar seized on this opening. Then you understand the gravity of our situation. Will you aid us in averting this catastrophe? There was a pause, filled with an almost tangible sense of contemplation. We are observers, not interveners, the Zth-Kree finally responded. The cycle of creation and destruction shapes the cosmos. However, your cooperation across species boundaries presents an interesting variable. As Soros and Zolkar continued their delicate diplomatic dance with the ancient nomads, chaos erupted back at the peace conference. Admiral Chen's comm channel crackled to life with an urgent transmission. Admiral! Major Sarah Hawkins's voice was tense. Colonel Stark has escaped custody. He's launched a coordinated attack on our relay stations. Chen's mind raced, calculating the implications. Without those relay stations, they'd lose contact with the Defiant. Deploy all available forces, Major. Those stations must be protected at all costs. The skies above key installations lit up with weapons fire as Loyalist forces clashed with Separatist insurgents. Major Hawkins and Commander Zoltar coordinated their joint security teams, deploying a network of automated defense drones that combined human AI with Risian energy shielding. Back in folded space, the Defiant's journey grew increasingly perilous. The ship entered a region of extreme distortion, causing localized time dilation effects. Admiral, Park called out, his voice strained. Sensors indicate time is flowing at different rates throughout the ship. Hull integrity is at risk. Captain Walker's voice cut through the chaos. I'm initiating a temporal field synchronization. Brace for turbulence. The Defiant shuddered as Walker, drawing on the worm's ancient knowledge, manipulated the ship's hybrid systems to harmonize the conflicting time streams. In the medical bay, Dr. Venn watched with growing concern as Walker's neural patterns began to fragment under the strain. I'm losing him, Venn muttered, his fingers flying over his console as he worked to develop a neural stabilizer on the fly. The experimental device, a fusion of human neuroscience and Zeraxian biotechnology, was a risky move to preserve Walker's human identity within the expanded consciousness. As the Defiant approached its exit point from folded space, a new complication arose. Long-range sensors detected that the comet threatening Rhesus had begun to break apart. Multiple fragments detected, Park reported. The debris field has increased exponentially. Our original intercept plan is no longer viable. Chen turned to Science Director Zolvin, who had been analyzing the data. Director, we need alternatives. Zolvin's eyes gleamed with the light of inspiration. The ship's organic components. We could use them to grow a swarm of smaller, semi-autonomous vessels. These biomechanical drones could intercept the scattered fragments, while we focus on the largest remaining piece. Chen nodded, her decision made in an instant. Make it happen. Chief Engineer Reeves, his face illuminated by the glow of holographic displays, began the intricate process of budding the new vessels. The Defiant's hull bulged and rippled, new structures forming and detaching in a display of cosmic mitosis. As the ship prepared to emerge from folded space, its form now altered beyond recognition, Chen surveyed the swarm of biomechanical drones that surrounded them. Each was linked to the central consciousness, guided by Captain Walker, forming an unprecedented fusion of human, Rizian, and Xeraxian technologies. The Defiant shuddered one final time as it burst back into normal space, the swarm of drones spreading out around it like a cloud of metallic spores. Before them loomed the fragmented remains of the comet, a field of destruction stretching as far as the eye could see. Chen's voice rang out, clear and determined. "All units, prepare for intercept. The fate of Reese's hangs in the balance." "Balance! Let's do this!" The Defiant burst forth from folded space, its form now a marvel of hybrid technology. Surrounding the ship, a swarm of biomechanical drones spread out like a cloud of metallic spores, each linked to the central consciousness, guided by Captain Walker. As they emerged, the fragmented remains of the comet loomed before them, a field of destruction stretching as far as the eye could see. Chen's eyes widened at the sight, but her voice remained steady as she issued her commands. "All units prepare for intercept. Captain Walker, deploy the drones." Walker's voice, strained but determined, echoed through the ship's systems. "Acknowledged, Admiral. Initiating swarm deployment." The biomechanical drones surged forward, each one targeting a specific fragment of the shattered comet. The main ship oriented itself towards the largest piece, its organic hull rippling and adapting to generate new shielding structures. Lieutenant Park's fingers danced across his console, coordinating the complex dance of ship and drones. "Drones engaged with smaller debris, Admiral. Main ship approaching primary target." As the Defiant closed in on the largest comet fragment, Chen's comm channel crackled to life. Ambassador Soros's voice came through, tinged with excitement. "Admiral, we've made a breakthrough with the Zeth Kree. They've agreed to share data on the comet's composition." Chen's eyes lit up. "Excellent work, Ambassador. Transmit that data to us immediately." Within moments, the new information flowed into the Defiant systems. Captain Walker's expanded consciousness absorbed the data, quickly integrating it into their interception strategy. "Adjusting drone trajectories for maximum efficiency," Walker reported. "This new data is invaluable, Admiral." On the bridge, Science Director Zolvin analyzed the incoming information. "The comet's core contains dense metallic elements. Our gravity manipulation device may face resistance." Chen nodded grimly. "Understood. Chief Reeves, prepare for potential complications." In engineering, Reeves and his team worked feverishly to reinforce the ship's systems. The organic components of the hull strained under the pressure, microfractures beginning to form. "Hold together," Reeves muttered, his hands flying over the controls as he initiated emergency repair protocols. As the Defiant approached its target, the drones began impacting the smaller comet fragments. Each collision created a brilliant flash, visible even from the distant Rizian homeworld. On the planet's surface, mass evacuations were underway. Rizian and human ships worked in tandem, ferrying civilians to orbital stations and nearby colonies. The streets of major cities teemed with activity as people rushed to secure vital resources and irreplaceable cultural artifacts. Back in the void of space, the Defiant closed in on the main comet fragment. Chen watched the tactical display, her heart racing as the distance rapidly decreased. "Prepare to deploy the gravity manipulation device," she ordered. The ship shuddered as the weapon powered up, drawing enormous amounts of energy from its hybrid systems. But as the device activated, alarms blared across the bridge. "The core is resisting," Park shouted. "Gravity manipulation ineffective." In that split second, Walker made a decision that would alter the course of the mission. His voice, layered with the tones of his expanded consciousness, rang out. "Changing tactics, preparing for physical impact." Chen's eyes widened. "Walker, what are you—" Before she could finish, the Defiant surged forward, its reinforced hull aimed directly at the comet's core. The impact was tremendous, sending shock waves through the ship's structure. Emergency bulkheads slammed into place as multiple systems reported critical damage. "Hull breach in sections 5 through 9, Reeves shouted over the comm. "Initiating emergency containment." But amid the chaos, Chen saw that Walker's gambit had worked. The comet's core shattered, its deadly mass dispersing into harmless fragments. As the immediate danger passed, Chen turned her attention to the ship's status. Damage report. The responses came in rapidly, painting a grim picture. The Defiant had suffered severe damage across multiple systems. Its organic components showed signs of cellular degradation, pushed beyond their limits by the extreme maneuver. In the medical bay, Dr. Venn worked frantically to stabilize Captain Walker. The neural patterns of the human consciousness within the expanded awareness were becoming dangerously unstable. Administering experimental neural stabilizer, Venn reported, his voice tense. It's our only chance to preserve his human identity. As the Defiant limped back towards Rizian space, Chen received another urgent communication. Major Hawkins's voice came through, breathless but triumphant. Admiral, we've neutralized Colonel Stark and his separatists. The colony is secure, and the antimatter warheads have been disarmed. A wave of relief washed over Chen, but she knew their trials were just getting started. The Defiant, once a pinnacle of technological achievement, now struggled to maintain basic functions. Captain Walker's consciousness teetered on the brink of fragmentation, held together by Dr. Venn's desperate efforts. As they approached the Rizian homeworld, Chen noticed an unexpected development on the long-range sensors. The massive form of the Zeth-Kree vessel had altered course, now following the Defiant's trajectory. Ambassador Soros, Chen called over the comm. What are the Zeth-Kree's intentions? Soros's voice came back, a mix of uncertainty and cautious optimism. They claim to be intrigued by our display of interspecies cooperation. Admiral, I believe they may be offering assistance. Chen looked out at the stars, her mind racing with the implications. The Defiant had saved Reese's, but at a terrible cost. Now, as they limped home, a new and ancient power had taken an interest in their plight. The Admiral stood, her voice carrying the weight of command despite their dire situation. All hands, prepare for emergency docking procedures. We're not out of this yet. As the Defiant approached Rizian space, its crew raced against time to save both their ship and their captain. In the planet's atmosphere, the remnants of the shattered comet burned up harmlessly, a celestial light show that marked the dawn of a new era of cooperation, in the beginning of an even greater adventure. As the Defiant limped towards Rizian space, the true extent of the damage became apparent. The ship's organic systems, pushed beyond their limits during the desperate maneuver to destroy the comet, were rapidly deteriorating. Chief Engineer Marcus Reeves's voice crackled over the comm, strained but determined. Admiral, I'm initiating emergency repair protocols. We're redirecting power to the remaining functional, biomechanical components. Chen watched through the view screen as the Defiant's exterior began to shift and morph, its organic hull attempting to seal breaches and stabilize its structure. The sight was both fascinating and unsettling, a testament to the ship's remarkable resilience and the price paid for their victory. In the medical bay, Dr. Elias Venn worked feverishly to stabilize Captain Walker. The neural patterns of the human consciousness within the expanded awareness were becoming dangerously unstable, threatening to fragment completely. Administering third dose of neural stabilizers, Venn reported, his fingers flying over the medical console. Vital signs are erratic, but holding. Walker's body convulsed on the biobed, his mind grappling with the vast influx of information from the Zoraxian worm and the ship's hybrid systems. Venn watched the neural activity monitors with growing concern, knowing that each passing moment brought them closer to losing the captain's human identity entirely. As the Defiant approached Rizian orbit, Chen's attention was drawn to the massive Zeth-Kree vessel that had altered course to follow them. Ambassador Soros's earlier words echoed in her mind. Could they truly be offering assistance? Her thoughts were interrupted by a startling sight on the monitor. Tendrils of energy extended from the Zeth-Kree ship, reaching out towards the Defiant's damaged hull. Chen tensed, ready to order evasive maneuvers, but something in the energy's behavior gave her pause. Admiral, Lieutenant Park called out, his voice filled with wonder. The Zeth-Kree energy signatures. They appear to be analyzing our hull composition and supporting our failing systems. Chen's mind raced, weighing the potential risks against their desperate need for aid. Maintain our course, but be prepared to break away at a moment's notice. On the Rizian homeworld below, crowds gathered in city centers, their eyes turned skyward. The remnants of the shattered comet burned up in the atmosphere, creating a breathtaking display of celestial fireworks. Amid the awe and celebration, teams of Rizian and human scientists worked tirelessly, collecting data on the comet fragments to understand the true nature of the threat they had narrowly escaped. As the Defiant entered Rizian orbit, a new crisis emerged. The ship's organic components began to reject the mechanical systems, causing cascading failures throughout the vessel. Alarms blared across every deck as system after system went offline. In a moment of clarity amidst the chaos of his fragmented consciousness, Captain Walker made a critical decision. His voice, layered with the tones of his expanded awareness, rang out through the ship's comm system. Initiating emergency separation protocol, detaching mechanical sections from organic components. The crew watched in stunned silence as the Defiant split into two distinct entities. The purely mechanical sections, containing the human crew and vital systems, separated from the massive, pulsating organic mass, influenced by the Azaraxian worm. As the organic entity drifted away, it began to move independently, responding to some unseen stimulus. A significant portion of Walker's consciousness remained tethered to this cosmic anomaly, leaving his physical body in a catatonic state. On the planet's surface, seismic sensors began registering unusual activity. Deep beneath the crust of Reese's, something ancient stirred, awakened by the presence of the orbiting organic mass. Massive tunnels, previously undiscovered, started to open beneath major Rizian cities. Panic spread as the ground trembled and buildings swayed. Emergency services scrambled to evacuate affected areas, their efforts hampered by the sheer scale of the disturbance. The Zathkri ship, observing these events, suddenly changed its behavior. It positioned itself between the Rizian planet and the organic mass in orbit, emitting a complex pattern of energy pulses. The effect was immediate and striking. The seismic disturbances below began to subside, and the erratic movements of the orbital entity stabilized. Admiral Chen, watching these events unfold from a nearby Rizian space station, knew that swift action was needed. She opened a comm channel to all available personnel. "This is Admiral Chen. I'm establishing a joint human-Rizian crisis command center on the planet's surface. All available scientists and military personnel are to report for immediate deployment. Our priorities are investigating the underground disturbances and monitoring the orbiting organic mass." As teams mobilized on the surface, Dr. Venn approached Chen with a daring proposal. "Admiral, I believe I have a way to reintegrate Captain Walker's consciousness. If we can use the Zathkri's energy manipulation technology in conjunction with our neural transfer device, we might be able to bridge the gap between Walker's body and the orbiting entity." Chen nodded, her expression grim. "Make the necessary preparations, Doctor. We need Walker back if we're going to make sense of this chaos." As the crisis team began to assemble, long-range sensors detected a new anomaly at the edge of the Rizian system. Lieutenant Park's voice was filled with disbelief as he reported the findings. "Admiral, you're not going to believe this. We're picking up an object massive in size. Initial readings suggest it's moving under its own power. It's on a direct course for Rizian space." Chen stared at the sensor readings, her pupils dilating. The object's size and composition matched ancient Rizian legends of a world ship, long dismissed as nothing more than myth. As she contemplated this new development, Chen realized that the challenges they faced were rapidly outpacing their understanding. With the fate of Captain Walker hanging in the balance, mysterious forces awakening beneath the Rizian surface, the enigmatic presence of the Zathkri, and now the approach of a colossal world ship, Chen knew that the alliance between humans and Rizians faced its greatest test. They stood at the threshold of cosmic forces beyond their comprehension, where the lines between technology, biology, and ancient powers blurred into uncertainty. Cosmic forces beyond their comprehension, where the lines between technology, biology, and ancient powers blurred into an enigmatic tapestry of the unknown. As the massive world ship approached the Rizian system, Admiral Chen's voice rang out across the combined human-Rizian fleet. "All ships, form up. Establish a defensive perimeter around Reese's. We don't know what we're dealing with, but we'll face it together." The fleet moved into position, a wall of steel and energy shielding between the planet and the incoming behemoth. On the main view screen, Chen watched as the Defiant, now split into its mechanical and organic components, was carefully guided into a secure docking bay within the Risian orbital station. "Chief Engineer Reeves," Chen called over the comm. "What's the status of the Defiant?" Marcus Reeves's voice came back, tight with stress. "It's bad, Admiral. We've got teams working around the clock, but the damage is extensive. We're looking at weeks of repairs minimum." Chen nodded grimly. "Do what you can. We may need every ship we have before this is over." On the planet's surface, chaos erupted as the seismic activity intensified. Buildings swayed, streets cracked, and panic spread through the major Risian cities. Emergency broadcasts blared from every communication device, urging citizens to evacuate to designated safe zones. Deep beneath the planet's crust, a joint human-Risian geological survey team descended into the newly formed tunnels. Dr. Lana Zoth, a prominent Risian geologist, led the way, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement as she studied the readings on her handheld scanner. "These tunnels," she breathed, her voice filled with awe. "They're not natural formations. The technology required to create something like this, it's beyond anything in our records." As they pressed deeper, the narrow passageways opened into a vast chamber. The walls pulsed with a soft bioluminescent light, revealing intricate patterns etched into every surface. At the center of the chamber stood a massive pillar of swirling energy, stretching from floor to ceiling. "My God," whispered Dr. Xoth's human counterpart, Dr. James Riley. "It's some kind of power source, but the energy readings, they're off the charts." In orbit aboard the Risian space station, Dr. Elias Venn worked feverishly to prepare for Captain Walker's consciousness reintegration. The medical chamber hummed with a combination of human and Zathkri technology, a testament to the unprecedented cooperation between species. "Neural pathways aligned," Dr. Venn announced, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "Initiating transfer sequence in 3, 2, 1. A blinding light filled the chamber as energy arced between Walker's physical body and the orbiting organic mass. The captain's form convulsed on the medical bed, his back arching as his fragmented consciousness fought to reunite. Suddenly, alarms blared across the station. Lieutenant Park's voice crackled over the comm system. "Admiral Chen, the world ship, it's accelerating. ETA to Risian orbit, 3 minutes." Chen's eyes widened. "All ships, battle stations, prepare for possible hostile contact." As the massive world ship entered the system, its true nature became apparent. Its surface was a twisted landscape of biomechanical structures, pulsing with otherworldly energy. Massive tentacle-like appendages extended from its core, reaching out towards the Risian planet and its defenders. In the midst of the chaos, a modified stealth shuttle slipped away from the Risian orbital station. At its helm, Lieutenant Commander Jack Harper gripped the controls tightly, his heart made. "Cloaking systems engaged," he reported. "We're approaching the world ship now." But as the shuttle drew closer to the colossal entity, its systems began to falter. Warning lights flashed across the control panel as the ship was caught in an invisible energy field. "We're losing control," Harper shouted, fighting with the unresponsive controls. "Brace for impact." The shuttle was pulled inexorably towards the world ship, passing through layers of shimmering energy fields before being swallowed by a massive opening in its surface. With a bone-jarring thud, the craft came to rest in a cavernous, biomechanical docking bay. As Harper and his crew struggled to comprehend their surroundings, a more immediate crisis unfolded back at the Risian orbital station. The world ship, now in orbit, unleashed a powerful energy beam that engulfed the medical chamber, containing Captain Walker, the orbiting organic mass, and the Zathkri vessel. Inside the chamber, Walker's body arched off the bed, his eyes snapping open to reveal swirling galaxies where pupils should be. His voice, when it came, was a chorus of 1,000 voices speaking as one. "We are the bridge," he intoned. "The past and future converge. The cycle begins anew." Admiral Chen, watching from the station's command center, felt a chill run down her spine. As the combined fleet held its defensive position and the planet below trembled with awakening power, she realized that they stood at the precipice of a cosmic revelation that would forever change the course of human and Rizian history. The world ship loomed above them, a silent sentinel holding untold secrets. And within its vast corridors, Lieutenant Commander Harper and his crew found themselves surrounded by technology beyond their wildest imagination, the first humans to set foot in what could be humanity's greatest discovery, or its ultimate doom. Destruction. As the energy beam from the world ship engulfed the medical chamber, the orbiting organic mass in the Zathkri vessel, reality itself seemed to warp and bend. The organic mass, once a massive entity in orbit, began to shrink rapidly. It twisted and contorted, compressing into a dense ball of pulsating matter. In a blinding flash, it shot towards the medical chamber, phasing through the walls and merging with Captain Walker's prone form. Walker's body convulsed violently, his skin rippling as the alien matter integrated with his cellular structure. His eyes snapped open, no longer filled with galaxies, but glowing with an otherworldly light. The captain's voice, when it came, was a discordant blend of human and something else entirely. "The convergence, it's happening," he gasped, his words echoing with a strange resonance. Around him, the medical chamber began to change. The walls warped and bent, fusing with the surrounding orbital station. Human and Rizian technology melded with alien components, creating a hybrid structure that defied conventional engineering. On the planet's surface, chaos erupted. The ground buckled and heaved as if the planet itself was awakening from a long slumber. Massive fissures opened in the streets of Rizian cities, swallowing vehicles and buildings alike. From these gaping wounds in the earth, colossal structures began to rise. Towering spires of gleaming metal and crystalline material thrust upwards, their surfaces etched with intricate patterns that pulsed with inner light. As they emerged, a network of energy beams connected them, forming a web that stretched across the planet's surface. In the orbital station's command center, Admiral Chen stared at the holographic displays in disbelief. The sensors were going haywire, registering off-the-scale readings of electromagnetic activity. "Status report," she barked, her eyes never leaving the screens. Lieutenant Park's fingers flew over his console. "The structures on the surface, they're communicating with the world ship, Admiral. Energy signatures match. It's like they're part of the same system." Chen's mind raced, trying to process the implications. "Get me a direct line to Major Hawkins on the ground. We need eyes on those structures now." As if in response to Chen's commands, the view screen shifted to show a team of human and Rizian soldiers, cautiously entering one of the newly emerged towers. At their head was Major Sarah Hawkins, her face set in fierce dedication as she led her squad deeper into the alien structure. "Admiral," Hawkins's voice crackled over the comm, "you're not going to believe this. We found some kind of control room. The technology here, it's beyond anything we've ever seen." The feed from Hawkins's helmet cam showed a vast chamber filled with pulsating holographic displays. Star maps and complex schematics floated in the air, shifting and changing as if responding to unseen commands. "It looks like some kind of planetary defense system," Hawkins continued, her voice filled with awe. "These structures, they're meant to protect Reese's from cosmic threats." Chen's response was cut short as alarms blared across the command center. The medical chamber containing Captain Walker had detached from the station and was moving under its own power, accelerating toward the world ship. "All available units, intercept that chamber," Chen ordered, but even as she spoke, she knew it was futile. The chamber crossed the vast distance in minutes, merging seamlessly with the world ship's hull. Aboard the world ship, Lieutenant Commander Jack Harper and his reconnaissance team pressed deeper into its biomechanical interior. They moved cautiously through pulsating corridors, their path lit by bioluminescent growths that seemed to react to their presence. "My God," whispered Ensign Rodriguez, pointing ahead. "Look at that!" The corridor opened into a massive chamber, easily the size of a small city. At its center floated a colossal entity, its form a twisted blend of organic matter and mechanical components. As they watched, energy from the Rizian structures flowed into the chamber, causing the being to stir. "Harper to Admiral Chen," the lieutenant commander called, his voice tight. "We found something. Transmitting visual data now." As the feed reached the orbital station, a collective gasp went through the command center. The being within the world ship was unlike anything they had ever encountered, its scale and complexity defying easy comprehension. Before Chen could respond, movement at the edge of the chamber caught Harper's attention. A figure emerged from a newly formed opening in the wall, moving with inhuman grace and purpose. "Captain Walker?" Harper called out, recognizing the familiar form despite its alien movements. Walker turned, his eyes glowing with the same energy that pulsed through the world ship. When he spoke, his voice resonated with the power of 1,000 minds. "We are the bridge between past and future," he intoned. "The cycle begins anew. Prepare for the awakening." As Walker's words echoed through the chamber, the colossal entity at its center began to unfurl, its awakening heralding a new chapter in the cosmic drama unfolding around Rizian. The massive entity's awakening sent shockwaves through the system, both literal and figurative. Admiral Chen, her face illuminated by the holographic displays, surveyed the unfolding chaos with the intense look. "Initiate Operation Starweaver," she commanded, her voice cutting through the tension-filled air of the command center. "Deploy survey drones to map the energy web. I want every connection between the planet, world ship, and our fleet analyzed." Within moments, a swarm of sleek, specialized drones launched from the orbital station. Their advanced sensors pulsed with activity as they spread out across the system, weaving through the newly formed energy strands that connected the disparate elements. On the planet's surface, Major Sarah Hawkins led her team deeper into the towering alien structure. The air hummed with latent power, making the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. "There," she said, pointing to a series of intricate panels lining the chamber wall. "Those look like control interfaces." As Hawkins approached, the panels flickered to life, responding to her presence. She hesitated for a moment, then pressed her hand against the smooth, cool surface. The effect was immediate and dramatic. A deep rumble shook the planet to its core. Outside, the massive spires that had erupted from Rizian's surface began to glow with increasing intensity. Beams of concentrated energy shot skyward from each tower, converging on a single point in space. The world ship. "Hawkins to Admiral Chen," she reported, her voice tight with awe. "We've activated something big down here. The towers. They're connecting to the world ship." In orbit, the crew of the station watched in stunned silence as a bridge of pure energy formed between Rizian and the colossal vessel. It solidified before their eyes, creating a physical link between planet and ship. Meanwhile, aboard the world ship, Lieutenant Commander Jack Harper and his team pressed on through the twisting biomechanical corridors. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a sight that stopped them in their tracks. Captain Isaac Walker stood before them, but he was changed. His skin gleamed with a metallic sheen, and biomechanical implants protruded from his flesh. Tendrils extended from his fingertips, interfacing directly with the ship's systems. "Captain!" Harper called out, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. Walker turned, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. He regarded Harper and his team with a mixture of recognition and detachment. "The awakening approaches," Walker intoned, his voice resonating with alien harmonics. "Follow if you seek understanding." Without waiting for a response, Walker turned and continued his purposeful stride towards the central chamber. Harper hesitated for a moment, then made a decision. "We follow, but maintain distance," he ordered his team, "and keep a channel open to Admiral Chen. She needs to know what's happening in here." As they moved deeper into the world ship, the walls pulsed with increasing intensity. The air itself seemed charged with potential energy, making breathing difficult. Back on the orbital station, Dr. Elias Venn's fingers flew across his console as he analyzed the flood of data pouring in from the various sensors monitoring Captain Walker's transformation. "This is unprecedented," he muttered, his eyes wide with excitement and fear. It's as if Walker's consciousness is merging with both the Zeraxian entity and the world ship itself. He's becoming something else entirely. Admiral Chen absorbed this information, her mind racing with the implications. She turned to her communications officer. Order the fleet into defensive formation around the energy bridge. We need to protect that connection while maintaining our ability to respond to any threats. As the ships moved into position, engineers reported strange occurrences across the fleet. Organic-looking protrusions began to form on the hulls, enhancing sensor capabilities and improving power distribution. The ships themselves seemed to be evolving in response to the alien energies permeating the system. On the planet's surface, Major Hawkins and her team made another startling discovery. Hidden within the ancient structure, they found a sealed chamber containing a single stasis pod. As they approached, the pod's systems began to hum to life, responding to the energy surges coursing through the planet. "Admiral," Hawkins reported, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation, "we found someone or something in stasis. It's waking up." Chen's response was immediate. "Maintain safety protocols, Major. I'm sending a team of xenobiologists to assist. We need to handle this with utmost caution." As these events unfolded across the system, Walker and Harper's team finally reached the central chamber of the world ship. The colossal entity within stirred, its massive form shifting in response to their presence. Walker stepped forward, extending his transformed hands towards the being. As they connected, visible streams of energy flowed between them, causing the entire world ship to shudder with activity. The energy bridge between Rizian and the world ship stabilized, transforming from a beam of pure energy into a solid physical structure. Admiral Chen, recognizing the gravity of the moment, made a decision that would alter the course of human and Rizian history. "Prepare an expedition team," she ordered. "We're going to cross that bridge and face whatever awaits us on the other side." As the combined human and Rizian forces prepared for this momentous journey, the ancient stasis pod on the planet's surface continued its activation sequence. The Rizian system stood on the brink of a cosmic revelation, with Captain Walker at its center, transformed into a living conduit between worlds. The fleet maintained its protective formation, their evolving ships a testament to the unprecedented changes sweeping through the system. As Admiral Chen prepared to lead the expedition across the energy bridge, the true nature of the world ship, its inhabitant, and their connection to Rizian's ancient past remained a mystery waiting to be unraveled. Unveiled. Admiral Chen took a deep breath, steeling herself for the monumental task ahead. "Expedition team, prepare for departure," she announced, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We cross the bridge in 5 minutes." As the combined human-Rizian team donned their advanced environmental suits, Chen performed a final systems check. The suit's displays flickered to life, streaming real-time data about their surroundings. With a nod to her second-in-command, Chen led the way onto the energy bridge. The structure beneath their feet hummed with power, a tangible reminder of the forces at work around them. As they progressed, the team's sensors began picking up subtle changes in the bridge's composition. "Admiral," Lieutenant Yara Dasgupta called out, her voice tense with excitement, "the bridge material is shifting. It's transitioning from Rizian elements to something else entirely." Chen acknowledged with a curt nod, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. The world ship loomed larger with each step, its biomechanical surface a stark contrast to the sleek lines of their own vessels. Halfway across the bridge, the team encountered an unexpected phenomenon. The surface beneath their feet became semi-transparent, revealing a complex network of energy conduits. "My God!" breathed Commander Alexei Volkov, the team's chief engineer. "Look at the data transfer rates. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." Chen motioned for the team to proceed with caution. As they carefully navigated the transparent section, their suit sensors recorded the massive data transfers occurring through the conduits. Back on Rizian's surface, Major Hawkins and her team stood at attention as the ancient stasis pod completed its activation sequence. With a hiss of escaping gases, the pod opened to reveal a tall, silver-skinned being. The xenobiology team tensed as the being's eyes fluttered open, revealing pupils with a distinct, star-like pattern. It sat up slowly, taking in its surroundings with an air of calm curiosity. When it spoke, the sound was unlike anything Hawkins had ever heard, a melodic series of clicks and whistles that seemed to resonate on multiple frequencies simultaneously. Translation devices are struggling, reported Dr. Anesh Mittal, the team's linguist. But they're adapting. Give it a moment. Inside the world ship, Lieutenant Commander Harper watched in awe as Captain Walker's transformation continued. Bioluminescent patterns spread across Walker's skin, pulsing in perfect synchronization with the movements of the colossal entity. "Sir," Ensign Rodriguez called out, her voice tight with concern. "The entity, it's moving." The massive being stirred, its form shifting within the cavernous chamber. The movement sent vibrations coursing through the world ship's structure, activating dormant systems throughout the vessel. "New passages opening up," reported Specialist Chen, her eyes glued to her scanner. "Detecting large chambers ahead. Sir, you're not going to believe this. They're filled with technology and biological specimens in stasis." Harper made a quick decision. "Team Alpha, continue monitoring Captain Walker. Beta Team, with me. We're going to investigate those new chambers." As Harper led his team deeper into the world ship, Admiral Chen's expedition reached the massive organic airlock that served as the vessel's entry point. The structure pulsed and shifted, opening to reveal a cavernous docking bay. Chen's team entered cautiously, their weapons at the ready. They were immediately greeted by an array of alien beings, each one a unique blend of organic and mechanical components. One of the beings stepped forward, its body a seamless fusion of gleaming metal and pulsating flesh. When it spoke, Chen's translator struggled to keep up with the complex harmonics of its language. "Welcome, travelers," the being said, its voice resonating on multiple frequencies. "We are the guardians of the Nexus. You stand at the threshold of a new era for your species." Chen opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, a cascade of information flooded her suit's comm system. Reports from Raijin, the orbital station, and Harper's team inside the world ship poured in simultaneously. The ancient being on Rizian had begun interacting with the planet's technology, triggering the emergence of a vast planet-wide network of advanced systems. The combined fleet in orbit was undergoing rapid, unpredictable changes, with crew members reporting enhanced abilities and direct neural interfaces with their ships. And at the heart of the world ship, Captain Walker convulsed as he struggled to process the torrent of information flowing from the colossal entity. Harper's quick thinking with the neural stabilization device had created a buffer, but Walker's human mind was still barely containing the vast influx of alien knowledge. As Chen processed this information, she realized that the Rizian system had become a nexus of cosmic forces beyond their comprehension. The energy bridge pulsed beneath her feet, a physical manifestation of the connections forming between worlds, technologies, and species. The Guardian being watched Chen intently, its star-like eyes seeming to peer into her very essence. "Your journey has only just begun," it said, gesturing towards the world ship's interior. "Come, there is much to learn, and the fate of galaxies hangs in the balance." With a deep breath, Admiral Chen stepped forward, leading her team into the unknown. As they ventured deeper into the world ship, the true purpose of its arrival and its connection to Rizian's ancient past remained tantalizingly out of reach, a cosmic mystery waiting to be unraveled. Admiral Chen led her team deeper into the world ship, their footsteps echoing through the cavernous corridors. The alien architecture pulsed with an otherworldly energy, guiding them towards what appeared to be the heart of the vessel. As they rounded a corner, the team froze in awe. Before them stretched a massive chamber, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. At its center stood a colossal holographic display, its swirling lights depicting a breathtaking view of the galaxy. "My God," breathed Commander Volkov, his eyes wide. "It's a map of everything." Chen approached the display, her hand instinctively reaching out to touch it. As her fingers brushed the hologram, it responded, zooming in on countless worlds. Each planet was marked with intricate symbols and data streams. "This is incredible," Chen murmured, her mind racing with the implications. "We're looking at a galactic database. The intelligence we could gather from this..." Lieutenant Dasgupta was already scanning the display with her suit's sensors. "Admiral, I'm detecting markers for potential threats, allies, resource-rich worlds. It's all here." As Chen's team explored the central processing hub, Events on Rizian's surface took an equally dramatic turn. The silver-skinned being, now identified as Zorax, stood before a newly uncovered control panel, its star-like eyes focused intently on the flickering displays. Major Hawkins watched in fascination as Zorax's slender fingers danced across the alien interface. "Dr. Mittal, any progress on the translations?" The linguist nodded, his eyes never leaving his datapad. "It's coming through now, Major. Zorax is accessing some kind of historical database. It's talking about Rizian's true origins." Hawkins leaned in, her curiosity piqued. "What do you mean, true origins?" Middle's eyes widened as he processed the incoming data. "Major, according to this, Rizian wasn't just a random colony world. It was an outpost of an advanced civilization that once spanned the entire galaxy." As this revelation unfolded on the planet's surface, deep within the world ship's central chamber, Captain Walker's condition began to stabilize. The neural device Harper had improvised pulsed steadily, creating a buffer between Walker's human consciousness and the vast alien intelligence trying to merge with it. Walker's eyes fluttered open, now glowing with an ethereal light. He turned to Harper, his voice resonating with newfound power and knowledge. "I see it now, Commander. I understand." Harper approached cautiously. "What do you understand, sir?" "Everything," Walker replied, his gaze distant. "The entity, its name is Zalthor. It's the last of its kind, a race of cosmic gardeners. They seeded life across the galaxy, nurturing it, guiding its evolution." As Walker spoke, the massive form of Zalthor shifted, tendrils of energy connecting it to the captain. Through their shared consciousness, Walker accessed the world ship's primary systems, unlocking secrets that had lain dormant for millennia. "This ship," Walker continued, his voice filled with awe, "it's not just a vessel. It's a tool for creation itself. It can terraform worlds, manipulate space-time. Harper, do you realize what this means? We could solve every problem humanity has ever faced." While these revelations cascaded through the Rizian system, the Zathkri vessel, now fully integrated into the energy web, began to pulse with activity. Complex signals radiated outward, activating long-dormant systems throughout the system. On the orbital station, Dr. Ven's console lit up like a supernova. "Admiral Chen," he called over the comm, his voice tight with excitement, "you need to see this. The Zethkri ship is triggering some kind of system-wide activation. We're detecting energy signatures from previously uncharted orbital platforms. And, wait, there's something happening on Rizian itself." As if in response to Ven's words, massive structures began to emerge from Rizian's surface. Energy cannons of incomprehensible scale rose from hidden bunkers, their barrels aimed at the stars. Zorax, still interfacing with the planet's systems, transmitted a message to the stunned human and Rizian observers. "The Guardians left these defenses," the translation read, "to protect against the darkness between stars." Admiral Chen, processing the flood of information from multiple fronts, made a decisive call. "We're establishing a permanent research outpost here in the world ship," she announced to her team. "I want our best minds working on understanding and adapting this technology." As Chen's orders echoed through the comm channels, the combined fleet in orbit underwent another wave of transformations. Ship hulls shimmered, developing a crystalline outer layer that seemed to absorb and refract energy in impossible ways. On the bridge of the flagship, weapons officers reported startling changes to their systems. "Ma'am," one called out, her voice a mix of fear and excitement, "our weapons, they're evolving. I think we can manipulate space-time now." Chen nodded, her mind already racing with the tactical implications. "Lieutenant Commander Harper," she called over the comm, "I need you to establish containment protocols for the most advanced tech we're encountering. Set up secure vaults. We need to ensure we can control this power before we attempt to use it." As the Rizian system pulsed with newfound energy and ancient technologies stirred to life, Chen couldn't help but feel a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. They stood on the brink of a new era, with the power to reshape the galaxy at their fingertips. But with that power came responsibility, and the weight of it pressed down on her shoulders. The Admiral took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenges ahead. The journey into this new frontier had only just begun, and the true test of their unity and dedication lay in the stars that now seemed closer than ever before. Admiral Chen's gaze swept across the holographic display, her mind racing with the possibilities and challenges that lay before them. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the monumental task ahead. "Commander Volkov, Lieutenant Dasgupta," she said, her voice steady and determined. "We're establishing a permanent research outpost here in the world ship. I want our best minds working on understanding and adapting this technology." Volkov nodded, already tapping commands into his datapad. "I'll coordinate with the fleet to bring in our top scientists and engineers, Admiral." Chen turned to face the rest of her team. "We're standing at the threshold of a new era. The power we've discovered here could reshape the galaxy, but with that power comes immense responsibility. We must proceed with caution and purpose." Without missing a beat, Chen opened a secure channel to Lieutenant Commander Harper. "Harper, I need you to establish containment protocols for the most advanced tech we're encountering. Set up secure vaults. We need to ensure we can control this power before we attempt to use it." "Understood, Admiral," Harper's voice crackled through the comm. "I'll get right on it." As Chen's orders reverberated through the comm channels, the combined fleet in orbit underwent another wave of transformations. Ship hulls shimmered, developing a crystalline outer layer that seemed to absorb and refract energy in impossible ways. On the bridge of the flagship, weapons officers reported startling changes to their systems. "Ma'am," one called out, her voice a mix of fear and excitement, "our weapons, they're evolving. I think we can manipulate space-time now." Chen's mind raced with the tactical implications, but she pushed those thoughts aside. There would be time for that later. For now, they needed to focus on understanding and controlling these new technologies. In the days that followed, the Rizian system transformed into a hub of frenzied activity. Chen wasted no time in establishing a joint human-Rizian task force to oversee the research and implementation of the world ship's advanced systems. Secure laboratories sprang up within the massive vessel, each dedicated to studying specific aspects of the alien technology. Captain Walker, his body now stabilized by Harper's neural device, threw himself into the work of translating the vast knowledge gained from Zalthor into practical applications. He worked tirelessly alongside a team of human and Rizian scientists, focusing on developing new propulsion systems based on the world ship's space-time manipulation technology. Weeks of intense research and development culminated in a breakthrough. Chen stood in the world ship's newly constructed hangar bay, watching as a small shuttle equipped with a miniaturized version of the world ship's drive prepared for its maiden voyage. "Are you sure about this, Captain?" Chen asked, her eyes fixed on the sleek vessel. Walker nodded, his eyes glowing with that otherworldly light. "Absolutely, Admiral. The calculations are sound. This shuttle will revolutionize space travel as we know it." The hangar bay doors slid open, revealing the star-studded expanse of space. With a low hum, the shuttle lifted off and glided out of the bay. For a moment it hung there, a tiny speck against the cosmic backdrop. Then, in a flash of light, it vanished. Tense seconds ticked by. Chen held her breath, acutely aware of the potential consequences if something went wrong. Suddenly, her comm crackled to life. "Admiral Chen," came the excited voice of the shuttle's pilot. "Test flight successful. We've traveled 100 light years in just under 3 minutes. It's incredible out here." A cheer erupted in the hangar bay. Chen allowed herself a small smile, knowing that this was just the beginning. On the surface of Rizian, Zorax continued to reactivate and upgrade the planet's ancient defense systems. Massive energy shields flickered to life, enveloping major cities and strategic locations. The xenobiology team watched in awe as the planetary defense cannons underwent a series of test firings, demonstrating their ability to intercept and destroy targets at extreme ranges. Major Hawkins stood beside Dr. Mittel, her eyes wide as she watched a subterranean factory emerge from beneath the planet's surface. "What are they producing?" she asked, gesturing towards the stream of materials flowing out of the facility. Mittel consulted his datapad, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Advanced materials and components, Major. It seems these factories are gearing up to support the ongoing technological integration across the system." As the research and integration efforts continued, Chen ordered the retrofitting of the combined human-Rysian fleet with technologies derived from the world ship. Engineers and technicians worked around the clock, installing new weapon systems, shields, and sensors on the vessels. The cruiser Intrepid was the first to undergo the full upgrade process. Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching as the Intrepid executed a series of complex maneuvers that would have been impossible just weeks ago. "Incredible," murmured Commander Volkov, standing at Chen's side. "With a fleet of ships like that, we could do a lot of things," Chen interrupted, her tone cautionary. "But we need to be careful. Power like this, it can be intoxicating." As if to underscore her point, a priority message came through from the medical team on the world ship. Chen's expression tightened as she read the report. Several crew members working closely with the world ship's systems had begun to exhibit signs of accelerated evolution. Their bodies were undergoing rapid physical changes, developing enhanced strength, reflexes, and sensory perception. Chen's mind raced with the implications. These transformations could be the key to unlocking even greater potential, but they also presented significant risks. She needed to act quickly to contain and understand these changes. "Commander Volkov," she said, her voice tight with urgency, "I want you to set up quarantine zones within the world ship and on Rizian. We need to isolate and study these transformations before they spread further." As Volkov hurried to carry out her orders, Chen turned her attention to the Zathkri vessel, still integrated into the energy web. It had begun transmitting detailed star maps and navigational data, revealing the locations of other worlds that were once part of the ancient galactic network. Chen studied the data, her mind alive with possibilities. These coordinates could lead them to dormant outposts of the old civilization, potentially unlocking even more advanced technologies and knowledge. She opened a channel to the fleet. "Prepare scout ships for immediate dispatch. We're going to investigate these coordinates and re-establish contact with any surviving outpost." As the scout ships prepared for their mission, Chen couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. They stood on the brink of a new frontier, with the power to reshape the galaxy at their fingertips. But with that power came responsibility, and the weight of it pressed down on her shoulders. The Admiral took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenges ahead. The journey into this new frontier had only just begun, and the true test of their unity and dedication lay in the stars that now seemed closer than ever. Ever before, as Admiral Chen contemplated the vastness of their newfound capabilities, alarms blared across the command center. The holographic display flickered, revealing a massive gravitational anomaly rapidly approaching the Rizian system. Captain Walker's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light as he interfaced with the world ship's systems. "Admiral," he said, his voice tinged with urgency, "I've identified the threat. It's a rogue black hole, torn free from its galaxy by some cosmic cataclysm. It's on a direct collision course with Rizian and the neighboring systems." Chen's mind raced, assessing the situation. "How long do we have?" "At its current speed, less than 72 hours, Walker replied, his fingers dancing over the holographic interface. Without hesitation, Chen opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships form a defensive perimeter around the Rizian system. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." She turned to Commander Volkov. "Activate all planetary defense systems. Begin evacuation procedures for non-essential personnel to the world ship and secure locations." As the combined fleet moved into position, Captain Walker worked feverishly, his consciousness intertwined with Zalthor and the world ship's vast network. "Admiral," he called out, "I have a plan. We can use the world ship's space-time manipulation technology, combined with the reactivated galactic network, to create a massive energy field. If we can generate enough power, we might be able to divert the black hole's path." Chen nodded, her expression grim. "Do it. Whatever resources you need, you have them." As preparations for this unprecedented endeavor began, a new threat emerged. Colonel Stark's separatist forces launched a final, desperate attack on the Rizian system. Their ships targeted key facilities, attempting to sabotage the defense efforts. "Damn it," Chen muttered. "Of all the times for Stark to make his move." She opened a secure channel to Lieutenant Commander Harper. "Harper, deploy the Vanguard units Neutralize the separatist threat. Harper's voice crackled through the comm. Understood, Admiral. We're on it. The enhanced soldiers of the Vanguard units burst into action, their advanced weaponry and superior abilities on full display. They engaged the separatist forces in intense battles across the system, their movements fluid and precise. On the surface of Risian, Major Hawkins led a team to defend a crucial power relay station. Energy weapons sizzled through the air as Vanguard soldiers outmaneuvered their opponents. Hawkins ducked behind a barricade, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to dodge a barrage of incoming fire. "Push forward," she shouted, her voice carrying over the din of battle. "We can't let them sabotage the relay." In space, Lieutenant Commander Harper piloted a sleek, newly upgraded fighter. He weaved through a field of debris, pursuing a separatist cruiser. With a thought, he activated the fighter's new weapon system. A pulse of energy erupted from his ship, warping the space around the cruiser. The separatist vessel shuddered, its engines sputtering and dying. "This is Harper," he reported. "Separatist cruiser disabled. Moving to the next target." As the battle raged, Captain Walker coordinated with Zorax and the Risian engineers. Massive generators on the planet's surface hummed to life, channeling unprecedented amounts of energy into the growing field. The world ship's systems pulsed with power, its crystalline structure glowing with an inner light. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of her flagship as the space around Risian began to warp and distort. The approaching black hole loomed large on the sensors, its gravitational pull already affecting the outer planets of the system. "Energy field at 60% capacity," Walker reported, his voice strained. "We need more power." Zorax's voice crackled through the comm. "Activating hidden planetary core function, channeling energy directly into the field." The surface of Risian seemed to ripple, as if the planet itself was alive. A beam of pure energy shot from its core, connecting with the world ship and the orbital platforms. The energy field expanded rapidly, its edges shimmering with otherworldly light. As the black hole entered the outer reaches of the system, the energy field stretched to meet it. The two forces collided in a spectacular display of cosmic power. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed the field might collapse under the immense gravitational pressure. Chen gripped the edges of her command console, her fist clenched. "Hold," she whispered. "Hold!" Suddenly, a blinding flash of light engulfed the entire system. The sensors on Chen's ship overloaded, plunging the bridge into darkness. For several agonizing seconds, there was nothing but silence. Then slowly the systems came back online. Chen blinked, her eyes adjusting to the dim emergency lighting. "Status report," she demanded. "Sensors coming back online," a technician reported, scanning for the black hole. The tension on the bridge was palpable as they waited for the results. Finally, the main display flickered to life, showing the star map of the system. "Admiral," the technician said, his voice filled with awe, "the black hole's trajectory has been altered. It's passing by the system. We did it." A cheer erupted on the bridge, but Chen remained focused. "What about the separatist forces?" Commander Volkov approached, his uniform singed but his eyes bright. "Lieutenant Commander Harper reports that Colonel Stark has been captured, Admiral. His forces are in disarray." Chen nodded, allowing herself a small smile. "Good work, everyone. But our job isn't done yet." She turned to face her crew, her voice steady and determined. "We've faced an unprecedented threat and emerged victorious. Now we must ensure that this power, this responsibility, is used wisely." As the reality of their achievement sank in, Chen knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy had changed, and they had changed with it. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The Human-Risian alliance had taken its first steps into a new era of cosmic exploration and responsibility.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.